So, what if I told you that the vast majority of the brilliant, award-winning advertising you see every single day, what if I told you it completely ignores its one true purpose?
Right?
Like, what if adding a simple, objectively ugly coupon could instantly improve a company's image in the eyes of you, the consumer?
I mean, it sounds completely counterintuitive to, well, basically everything we've been taught to appreciate about marketing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because we are so deeply conditioned to think of advertising as, I don't know, high art or cinema or pure entertainment. We just collectively forget what it is actually supposed to do.
Right. I mean, just think about the Super Bowl. We all sit around evaluating commercials based on how funny they are or which celebrities are in them.
Or the emotional music.
Yes, the music, we treat them like mini movies.
Yeah.
And yet the actual gritty mechanics of what makes you and me, open our wallets, take out our credit cards, and actually buy something that is often completely lost in that multi-million-dollar spectacle.
It really is.
So today on The Deep Dive, we are stripping away all that vanity of modern marketing.
Yeah.
We're going to look at the cold, measurable truth of what actually makes people take action.
We're basically getting back to the absolute bedrock here. The foundational principles of persuasion, psychology, and business accountability.
So true. So today we're pulling apart a core concept from Drayton.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who don't know, he literally wrote the book on common sense marketing.
The absolute legend in the space, yeah.
We're looking specifically at Chapter 1 of his foundational text, Common Sense Direct and Digital Marketing. We're going to explore how a guy making like £7 a week in the 1950s uncovered a truth that modern tech giants use today.
It's an incredible story.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
We'll uncover the forgotten reality that advertising is simply, quote, salesmanship in print. We'll explore why tracking real results utterly terrifies most marketing executives and reveal how the highly unglamorous, somewhat shady world of direct mail quietly became the blueprint for the entire modern global economy.
Yep.
Whether you're a startup founder trying to scale, an employee pitching ideas, or just someone who is insanely curious about how you're being persuaded every single day, this is your shortcut to understanding the invisible architecture of human behavior.
And what's truly remarkable about this chapter is a realization that the underlying principles, they haven't changed a bit, not even slightly.
Right. I mean, the tools have changed, but not the people.
Exactly. The delivery mechanism has evolved dramatically, of course. We went from physical letters in the mail to emails to interactive digital campaigns to, complex social media algorithms.
Yeah.
But the human psychology sitting at the absolute core of the transaction, that remains exactly the same. Because, well, the human brain hasn't had a software update in 100,000 years.
That is such a great way to put it. Okay, so to really grasp this, we need to go back in time a bit.
Let's do it.
The year is 1957. The author, Drayton, he finds himself in a rather bleak, desperate situation. He is making exactly £7 a week, editing a tiny, obscure trade journal.
Barely surviving.
Barely. He's living in a two-up, two-down cottage in the north of England. It has an outside lavatory, and he has a wife and a child to support.
Yeah.
On essentially nothing.
But desperation is a funny thing, isn't it? It completely strips away your ego.
Oh, it is the ultimate motivator.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Dr. Samuel Johnson said it best, and Bird actually quotes him right at the beginning here. He says, "When a man knows he's to be hanged in a fortnight, it concentrates his mind wonderfully."
Wow. Yeah, that'll do it.
Right? Bird needed money.
Yeah.
Pure and simple. And he noticed that a friend of his in the advertising business seemed to be making plenty of it without breaking a sweat.
Just living the good life.
Seemingly having a grand old time, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Bird decides, right then and there, he needs to become an advertising copywriter.
But, and this is what I love about him, he doesn't just walk into a posh London agency and demand a job on charm alone.
No.
He actually prepares. And his
Right.
preparation is deeply fascinating because it isn't what you'd expect at all. He essentially had three main qualifications. The first one, he learned human nature by sitting in a Northern English pub, which, honestly, if you think about it, is arguably the best, most unvarnished market research facility in the entire world.
Right. Who needs a focus group?
Exactly. You don't need focus groups with two-way mirrors if you have a local pub. Bird talks about interacting with wildly different people after they've had a few pints. When the alcohol flows, the social guard comes down and you see the raw, unfiltered emotional drivers of human beings.
It's the ultimate cross-section of society.
It really is. I mean, he describes serving a pint of mild ale to a regular, a guy named Alec. And Alec would stand there and tell this heartbreaking story of how his wife went out to the shops for a loaf of bread and literally never came back.
Oh, man. That's devastating.
It is. So right there, you are face to face with profound loss, loneliness, abandonment. And then literally 5 minutes later, Bird is in the American bar listening to a wealthy, arrogant cotton magnate complaining bitterly about the government trying to tax away all his money.
The complete 180.
Total 180.
Yeah.
So there you have greed, pride, the fear of financial loss.
And as a writer, as someone trying to understand what makes people tick, he is just absorbing this complete spectrum of human emotion.
Just soaking it in.
Fear, desire, storytelling, ego. You cannot learn that in a corporate boardroom.
Mm.
So that's qualification 1, raw humanity.
Yeah.
His second qualification was incredibly basic. He simply knew how to write. He understood grammar, syntax, and punctuation, which he notes, rather sarcastically, is surprisingly rare in the advertising industry.
Very rare, actually.
But his third qualification is where the real paradigm shift begins for him. He walked into the Manchester Public Library and decided to read every single book they had on the subject of advertising.
All 3 of them.
All 3. Literally the entire catalog. Plus, he enrolled in an evening course. So he does the actual work.
He does.
He enters the advertising industry thinking he has the basic groundwork covered, understanding the mechanics of what he's actually supposed to do, only to be completely, utterly shocked by what he finds inside the agencies.
It blew his mind. He discovers that his colleagues, these people in nice suits who are making all this money and driving nice cars, they are utterly clueless about the fundamentals of their own profession.
It's wild.
They hadn't studied the craft, they hadn't read the history, and more shockingly than anything else, they weren't even clear on the actual purpose of what an advertisement was meant to achieve.
Right, and this is what Bird outlines as the amateur approach. He points out that over 80 years prior to him entering the industry, so we're talking like late 1800s, early 1900s, the definition of advertising was clearly, definitively laid out by the pioneers of the industry, people like Claude Hopkins or John E. Kennedy.
Heavy hitters.
Exactly. And they defined it in 3 simple words: salesmanship in print. Or obviously, salesmanship in broadcast.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a mechanism to sell. That is, its only true economic justification for existing.
But that stark, simple truth had somehow been systematically forgotten or deliberately ignored by the modern industry. Bird cites a 1980 survey of senior British marketing people. 80% of them.
80%.
80%. They believed that advertising had some primary purpose other than selling. They were chasing this nebulous, incredibly hard to quantify concept called brand building or raising awareness.
Okay, wait. I have to push back here. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
You're saying brand awareness is totally useless? What about companies like Coca-Cola or Nike or Apple? I mean, they spend billions of dollars every year just associating their swoosh with elite athletes or showing a polar bear drinking a Coke.
Right. The classic example.
Yeah, they aren't putting a clip this coupon for 10 cents off on a billboard featuring LeBron James. Isn't there immense, undeniable financial value in that kind of prestige brand building?
That is the exact trap that 99% of businesses fall into.
Really?
Yes, there is value in it if you are a century-old, fast-moving consumer goods behemoth with a multi-billion-dollar budget and universal distribution.
Okay, fair point.
If you are Coca-Cola and your product is literally within arm's reach of 80% of the Earth's population in every supermarket and vending machine, then yes, reminding people you exist has a function.
Right, they could just turn around and buy it.
Exactly. But the problem is that small, medium, and even large B2B companies look at Nike and say, we need to do that. We need a lifestyle campaign.
They want the glamour.
They want the glamour, but they do not have Nike's budget or distribution. If a mid-sized software company or a local dental chain runs an awareness campaign, it is almost always a catastrophic waste of money because awareness doesn't pay the payroll.
Doesn't keep the lights on.
No, it doesn't. Furthermore, the true direct response pioneers will tell you that every effective direct response piece builds the brand, but not every brand piece drives a response.
Oh, that's interesting. Break that down.
So if I send you a brilliant, highly informative, trackable letter that solves a profound problem for you, you will think highly of my brand. I've built the brand and asked for the sale at the same time. The amateur approach just asks for your admiration.
And it actually gets worse. Bird points to a 1992 advertising age survey of over 1,000 senior executives in America. These are the people controlling massive, massive budgets.
Yes.
They were tested on their knowledge of basic proven marketing principles. The results were so abysmal, so mathematically terrible, that statistically, these executives would have scored higher if they had just checked the box for "don't know" on every single question.
It's honestly baffling. You really have to pause and analyze why this amateur approach persists so stubbornly. You have to ask yourself from a psychological standpoint, if you are a marketing executive, why on earth wouldn't you want to know if your multi-million-dollar ad campaign is actually selling the product?
Right. I mean, if I'm a startup founder and I'm burning venture capital, or if I'm a small business owner spending my own hard-earned profit on Facebook ads, I desperately want to know it's working. I need that data.
Yes, because it's your money. But think about the comfort of the alternative for a salaried corporate executive
Right.
or an agency creative. If nobody in the boardroom actually knows what an advertisement is supposed to do, if the metrics are entirely subjective, then how can anyone ever be fired for failing?
Oh, wow.
Right. If the goal of the campaign is declared to be raising brand awareness or starting a conversation, you literally cannot fail.
Because how do you prove I didn't start a conversation?
Exactly. You can. You can just commission a very dubious survey that says, brand sentiment went up by 2%. As long as you have a quick mind, a slick presentation style, a really nice slide deck, and an ingratiating manner with the CEO, you can make a very comfortable, highly lucrative living.
So it's basically a shield.
A massive shield. Accountability is terrifying to people who aren't confident in their skills. Ignorance in the agency world is highly lucrative bliss. It protects the mediocre.
There's a hilariously frustrating anecdote in the text that perfectly encapsulates this entire mindset. So Bird is interviewing a young, though not inexperienced, art director for a job at his agency.
Oh, this story is amazing.
Bird, being a student of the craft, asks his standard interview question. He says, "What books have you read on direct marketing or advertising?"
And the art director's response is an absolute classic of the genre. He tells Bird that he hasn't read any books on the subject because he doesn't believe in theory. He claims, and this is an exact quote, "I don't like to restrict my imagination."
He tells Bird he just wants to pick up the skills by being around and watching what happens at a good agency, just soaking in the vibes, essentially.
To which Bird, who is probably barely containing his absolute rage at this point, asks if the guy would expect to pick up brain surgery by just standing around the emergency room at the local hospital and occasionally holding a scalpel.
It's such a perfect comeback.
It is.
It perfectly highlights the absolute absurdity of refusing to study the foundational mechanics of a highly technical craft. I would think about it in modern terms. Imagine you are hiring a senior software engineer to build the back end of your banking app.
Yeah.
You ask them what coding languages they've studied. And they say, "Oh, I don't read books on syntax or algorithms. I don't want to restrict my digital imagination. I just like to vibe with the keyboard and see what kind of software flows out of me."
You throw them out of the building.
And call security.
Yeah.
Or, imagine hiring a structural engineer to build a suspension bridge. And he says he hasn't read any physics books because he wants to feel how much weight the steel can hold.
Right.
Of course not. You'd want the person who knows exactly, mathematically, the tensile strength of the materials. But because advertising and marketing are seen as creative fields, people mistake the blank canvas for the objective.
That is exactly the point. The objective of an advertisement isn't to be a piece of creative art. The objective is to sell. Creativity is merely a tool, a vehicle used to achieve the sale.
Yeah.
When you divorce the tool from the objective, when you separate the creativity from the accountability, you get beautiful, award-winning suspension bridges that immediately collapse under the weight of a single commuter car.
It's so true. So if you're listening to this right now, whether you are running a software startup, managing a local retail store, or even leading a massive corporate department, the practical takeaway here is to demand measurable sales and measurable actions from your marketing efforts.
Absolutely.
Do not settle for vanity metrics. Don't let an agency or a consultant tell you a campaign was a massive success because it generated awareness or impressions if it didn't generate revenue, qualified leads, or clear defined actions.
Spot on. So if general brand-focused advertising is largely unaccountable, navigating almost entirely by gut feeling, aesthetics, and ego, there has to be a counterculture.
Right.
There must be a group of people in the business world who are accountable, who are the people who actually know, with mathematical certainty, if their stuff
Well,
works.
according to Bird, those are the mail order folks, the direct response clients. And this brings us to what Bird describes as the difficult approach.
And they were considered difficult by the major advertising agencies because they had the audacity to demand reality.
Imagine that.
I know, right? These were clients selling via mail order catalogs or door-to-door salesmen or coupon clippers in the back of magazines. When they spent $1,000 on an advertisement, they demanded to see more than $1,000 come back in replies.
They wanted to see the ROI.
Exactly. They wanted leads, they wanted physical checks and cash in envelopes delivered to their P.O. box.
And because they tracked absolutely every single penny, they told their advertising agencies exactly when an advertisement failed. And they were not polite about it. They didn't care all about the agency's creative awards.
Naturally, the big, prestigious advertising agencies absolutely despise these direct response clients. They vastly preferred the movie's corporate clients with bottomless budgets and incredibly vague objectives.
The easy money.
Exactly, the easy money. The clients who would spend $10 million simply because the CEO's wife liked the look of the advertisement or because the commercial made them feel proud of their company. And the brilliant part for the agency was that if corporate sales went down that quarter, the agency could just blame macroeconomic factors.
Oh, that's convenient.
Right. They could blame the economy or a competitor lowering their prices or, a supply chain issue in the Midwest. There was always a convenient, untestable alibi.
But the direct response clients stripped away all the alibis. If the ad ran on Tuesday and the phone didn't ring on Wednesday, the ad was a failure. Period.
No hiding.
Exactly.
That's out.
But here is where it gets incredibly fascinating because the text gives us some extreme real-world examples of what happens when a company prioritizes artistic entertainment over actual salesmanship. Let's talk about the case of Peel's Beer in New York
Yeah.
and Isuzu cars in the United States.
Oh, these are legendary cautionary tales in the industry. Let's start with Peel's Beer. They launched an advertising campaign featuring these two animated characters, Bert and Harry Peel. The commercials were incredibly funny, incredibly popular. The public absolutely adored them. In fact, they loved them so much that when the company eventually tried to take the commercials off the air, there was a public outcry.
Really?
Yeah, people literally demanded they be brought back to television.
Which, I mean, on the surface, that sounds like the ultimate marketer's dream, right? You've created something so engaging that the audience is begging for your advertising.
You would certainly think so.
Sure.
But the internal data showed a dark reality. Every time those beloved, highly anticipated commercials were on the air, actual retail sales of the beer went down.
Wait, down, not even just flat.
Down. The advertising was so highly entertaining, so inherently likable and funny, that it completely obscured the actual merits of the product. It's a phenomenon sometimes called vampire creativity.
Vampire creativity, I like that.
Yeah, it's where the joke or the celebrity basically sucks all the attention away from the product. People were tuning in to watch a mini comedy sketch. They were not tuning in to be persuaded to change their beer drinking habits. They loved Bert and Harry, but they kept buying Budweiser.
And Isuzu had the exact same problem with their Joey Isuzu campaign in the late 80s, right?
Exactly the same.
Joey Isuzu was this pathological liar character making these absurd claims about the cars. It was hilarious. They won absolute mountains of industry awards for these commercials. The actor was a pop culture icon.
Huge cultural moment.
But the client just kept running them, pumping millions into the campaign, even though the data showed they did absolutely nothing to actually move cars off the dealer lots. People loved the joke, but they didn't trust the brand enough to buy a $30,000 vehicle from them.
No.
It's the ultimate vanity trap. You win a Cannes Lion award and you go bankrupt.
Which brings us to the actual mechanism of measurement. If you want to avoid the Isuzu trap, you need a response device.
Right.
A coupon to clip, a toll-free phone number to call, a specific website link to visit. But the general advertising industry developed this deeply ingrained, almost religious myth that putting a coupon or a direct call to action in a beautiful advertisement somehow spoils a brand's prestige.
They hated it.
Sensitive art directors would literally throw tantrums over having to include a dotted line and a little picture of scissors in their gorgeous minimalist layout. They thought it looked cheap and desperate.
I'm so glad you brought this up because we really need to dive into the data Bird provides here because it completely incinerates this myth. And I mean, it leaves absolutely nothing but ashes.
Let's hear it.
He cites historical research by Daniel Starch. Now, for the listener who might not know, Daniel Starch was a pioneer in market research back in the 1920s and 30s. He literally sent researchers door to door to interview people face to face with magazines in their hands.
That's dedication.
Right. Asking them exactly which ads they remembered and which parts they read. It was incredibly rigorous empirical data for its time. And Starch's data proved that putting a coupon in an ad actually increases the overall readership of the main text of the ad.
Which is the one thing every single advertiser on earth agrees is a good thing. You want people reading your copy.
Right. The coupon acts as a visual magnet that says, hey, there's actually something for you to do here.
Yeah.
But the data gets so much deeper. Bird mentions research by Telelab in the UK, where they explicitly asked both regular consumers and high-level business-to-business executives how they actually feel about these response devices. Like, do they hate them? Do they think they look cheap?
And the numbers they got back are just staggering. 89% of everyday consumers and 94% of business people believe that companies should provide a direct means of response in all their advertising.
It's almost everybody.
It is. They actively want the option to act. They want to be able to request a brochure or get a sample or ask a question.
And what about this precious brand image that the art directors were so fiercely protecting?
Well, the survey found that 77% of consumers and 61% of business people think the mere presence of a response device says something positive about a company.
Positive.
Yes, positive. It implies the company is helpful, accessible, and confident in their product. Only a microscopic fraction of the population, just 2% of consumers and 6% of business people, think a coupon makes a negative or cheap impression.
It is so rare to find data this conclusive in marketing. It proves that failing to use a response device, failing to give the customer a way to raise their hand, is a massive, inexcusable, unforced error.
It really is.
As Bird rather flippantly puts it in the text, people who deliberately refuse to use response devices based on these outdated myths are anywhere between 94 and 98% stupid.
That's a great line.
You are deliberately, actively ignoring what your own customers are explicitly asking for.
Think of traditional brand-only advertising, like standing on the edge of the Grand Canyon and shouting your company's name into the void and just hoping you hear a faint echo someday, right? Direct response marketing, on the other hand, is like handing the customer a microphone and a direct private line back to your headphones. Mm-hmm. What the data shows is that when you hand people that microphone, they actually want to speak to you.
You want to engage.
Yes. And this translates perfectly to modern media. The text mentions data from Sky TV in the UK back in 2006. They introduced an interactive red button on the remote control for viewers to press during commercials if they wanted more info.
Oh, I remember those.
Yeah. And in just a 6-month period, an astonishing 93% of viewers pressed that button during an ad. People inherently want to interact. They want to engage.
So all of this data raises a deeply important psychological question, doesn't it? If the general public clearly likes response devices, if they actively want them, if they engage with them constantly, and if they actually improve a brand's perceived image, why on earth are highly paid marketing agencies and corporate executives so utterly terrified of using them?
I mean, it all comes back to what we were talking about earlier, right? It has to be deep-seated insecurity.
Precisely. It is the terror of ultimate accountability. A response device, whether it's a paper coupon or a trackable digital link, is a ruthless truth teller.
Unforgiving.
Totally unforgiving. It reveals in cold, hard numbers whether your target audience was actually motivated to act on your expensive message or not. It tells you beyond a shadow of a doubt exactly how headline A performed against headline B.
It strips away all subjective opinion.
Yes. If you put a coupon in your beautiful, cinematic, award-winning advertisement and absolutely nobody clips it and sends it back, you can no longer strut around the agency pretend you are a misunderstood genius.
Yeah.
You have to face the brutal reality that your work failed to sell.
It essentially takes the power away from the CEO who loves the layout or the client's spouse who thinks the color blue looks nice, and it gives the power entirely, 100%, to the customer.
Which is exactly where the power belongs in a capitalist system.
Right.
The customer is the only critic whose opinion actually funds the payroll.
Exactly.
So the practical takeaway here for anyone listening, whether you are designing a full-page magazine ad, writing an email newsletter, or building a landing page for your sauce product, is simple but profound. Always give your audience a clear, direct, incredibly easy, and measurable way to respond to you.
Please do this.
Don't leave them hanging at the end of your message. They prefer the interaction, it builds trust, and quite frankly, it is the only way you will ever discover the objective truth about whether your messaging actually resonates.
And this is a big, but here's the terrifying reality of putting that coupon in your ad or that tracking pixel on your checkout button. You might get zero back.
That hurts.
The truth can hurt. Once you start aggressively measuring everything, you are inevitably going to start measuring your own failures.
And you will fail. Anyone who has ever run a real direct response campaign knows that.
You will fail a lot.
A lot. But that is exactly where the real million-dollar lessons are hidden. Which leads us to our next major theme, the immense value of surviving a shipwreck.
Bird starts this section of the chapter by quoting the 18th century writer Daniel Defoe, the author of Robinson Crusoe.
Love this quote.
It's so good. Defoe wrote, "The mariner to sail with is he who has been shipwrecked, for he knows where the reefs are."
I mean, that should be on the wall of every startup incubator in the world.
Really, it should.
Because Bird's own early career, when he finally struck out on his own in the mail order business, was basically a series of spectacular, agonizing, hilarious shipwrecks. By his own admission, he'd become a bit conceited as a young advertising director.
A bit cocky.
Very cocky. He thought he knew everything there was to know about copy and human psychology. And because he hated being judged by the subjective opinions of boring clients, he craved the objective truth of direct response. He wanted to gamble with his own money, but he wanted to control the odds.
Right.
So he sets out to make his fortune in the mail order business.
And his very first venture is an absolute masterclass in how a business can completely fail, even when the marketing is brilliant.
The story is so stressful.
It is. So he and a friend decide to run an advertisement selling ladies' hair pieces in the Daily Mirror newspaper. The ad cost them £560, which was a massive, massive sum of money for them at the time.
Right, they had to scrape together every penny they had. So they run the ad on a Saturday. Monday morning rolls around, they go down to their tiny borrowed one-room office, they put the key in the door, and they literally cannot push the door open.
Oh my God.
It is physically jammed shut from the inside by a massive mountain of mail, thousands of envelopes, all filled with cash and postal orders.
It is the ultimate direct response fantasy. They do some quick math and calculate they are going to make at least £5,000 in pure, unadulterated profit.
Right.
They think they're absolute geniuses.
The toast to the tip.
There's always a but in these stories.
Always.
They relied on a third-party supplier for the actual physical product. People were mailing in little snippets of their own hair so the supplier could color match the hairpiece.
Okay.
And this supplier made a tiny, seemingly insignificant logistical error. He left all the physical hair samples, thousands of them, sitting on a table right next to an open window in his warehouse.
Oh, no. You can see where this is going.
A gust of wind blows through the warehouse, the little snippets of hair scatter everywhere across the floor, completely mixed up, and suddenly they have absolutely no idea which shade of hair goes to which customer's order.
Disaster.
It is an absolute, unmitigated operational catastrophe, resulting in massive, sweeping refunds to furious customers. And it somehow gets even worse. The supplier, despite his own incompetence, realizes how much consumer demand Bird's advertisement just generated. So the supplier gets greedy.
Of course he is.
He decides to cut Bird and his partner out of the deal entirely and run the mail order business himself. But here is the critical lesson. The supplier fundamentally misunderstood what the business was.
What do you mean?
Well, he thought the business was selling hair pieces in the newspaper. He didn't understand the invisible architecture of Bird's copywriting. He didn't understand the precise psychological triggers, the pacing of the offer, the risk reversal of the guarantee.
I see.
He copies the what by buying his own ad space, but he completely misses the how. He writes his own terrible, feature-focused ad. It flops completely, nobody buys, and the guy goes bankrupt.
Wow.
It proves that direct marketing is a highly technical psychological skill, not just the act of buying space in a publication.
It's a perfect storm of failure. But I want you, the listener, to notice Bird's reaction to this disaster. He doesn't quit. He doesn't go back to the safety of a corporate salary.
No, he doesn't.
He is completely, hopelessly hooked on the immediate feedback loop of direct response. So he dusts himself off and tries again. This time, he partners with a friend selling a physical bodybuilding device called the Bulwarker.
This one is honestly my favorite story in the whole book.
It's so good.
Bird decides that to write the best copy, he needs to be his own product tester. He takes the Bulwarker home, uses it religiously for 30 days, gains 14 pounds of solid muscle, and becomes the ultimate, undeniable before and after model for his own advertisement.
Talk about putting skin in the game.
Literally, the front-end marketing strategy is absolutely flawless. He isn't just selling a promise, he is the living, breathing proof of the claim. It's incredibly persuasive.
He works like an absolute maniac, refining the copy, testing the headlines, and within 6 months, they are moving incredible volume. They are selling 1,000 units of this device every single week. It's a massive runaway hit.
Until, of course, he discovers his second major hidden reef.
Let me guess.
His business partner, the guy handling the books, it turns out, was fundamentally terrible at basic arithmetic.
Oh no, that's the worst kind of reef.
They realize, to their horror, that when you factored in the manufacturing, the shipping, the ad spend, and the overhead, they were selling every single unit at a financial loss.
Oh man.
1,000 times a week they were losing money. They were essentially paying people to take the product. They had to completely shut this booming business down.
It's exactly like spending years engineering the absolute fastest, most aerodynamic Formula One race car in the world, putting the best driver in the seat, and only realizing halfway down the track at 200 miles an hour that you completely forgot to install the brakes.
Exactly that.
The front-end marketing engine was a 10 out of 10, but the back-end business mechanics were fundamentally broken.
If we really analyze this, this is why failure in a trackable direct marketing environment is so immensely valuable. Much more valuable than success.
That was it.
Think about it. When you run a campaign and it succeeds brilliantly, what do? You pop the champagne, you hand out bonuses, you pat yourself on the back, and you naturally assume the success was a direct result of your uncommon genius and flawless intuition.
You just think you're golden.
Right. You learn almost nothing from success because you don't question it. But when you fail, when the envelopes don't arrive, or the conversion rate is 0, or the math doesn't work out at scale, you are forced, by the sheer pain of the loss, to forensically audit every single step of your process to find out exactly what went wrong.
So if you're a listener trying to build something right now, what is the core lesson here?
The lesson is that you must embrace and meticulously track your failures. Do not hide from them. If a campaign fails, that is a data point. Do not just look at the top-line revenue or the vanity metrics. You have to look at the operational math, the logistics, the profit margins.
And trying to look under the hood.
Yes. Do not rely entirely on third-party suppliers or partners without ruthlessly verifying the details yourself. A brilliant, award-winning advertisement absolutely cannot save a broken business model.
It's just so deeply ironic, because after all these disasters, after the hairpieces blew away and the bullworker bankrupted him, Bird's next venture was starting a subscription newsletter, advising people on how to make money.
The irony is rich.
And somehow, despite his track record, that one actually succeeded and ran profitably for years.
Because it was born of pure persistence. He had mapped out where all the reefs were. He had paid for his education in blood and sweat.
And this relentless trial and error, this surviving in the gritty, unglamorous trenches of the mail order business, wasn't just building Drayton Bird's individual career. It was quietly, methodically building the foundation of a massive global industry.
It really was.
Which brings us to the rise of what used to be considered a very squalid industry.
We really need to understand the historical context here. For a very long time, being in the mail order business was not something you bragged about at dinner parties.
No.
It was deeply unfashionable. It verged on the squalid. It was seen as the absolute bottom of the barrel in the advertising world.
It was the realm of hucksters, carnival barkers, and snake oil salesmen in the back of cheap comic books. The text explicitly mentions people selling things like virility by the inch, or touts selling cheap novelties sight unseen to gullible consumers.
Right.
Bird even recounts a story of asking a Belgian mail order operator back in 1962 if the bust expander product he was selling in magazines actually worked.
And the operator looked at Bird with sheer, unadulterated contempt and said, "If you ask me silly questions like that, I am going straight home."
Unbelievable.
It was an industry with a very, very loose relationship with the truth, and a lot of the products were absolute garbage.
And this is the massive turning point. Beneath the cheap plastic trinkets and the shady operators, the fundamental underlying mathematical logic of the medium was absolutely inescapable.
Right.
You are identifying a specific prospect. You are speaking directly to them as an individual, you are offering them a clear proposition, and you are measuring their exact binary response. It was the scientific method applied to human commerce.
And the smartest, most visionary minds in the mainstream advertising world eventually saw this. David Ogilvy, Arguably one of the most famous and respected ad men in history, a guy who built campaigns for Rolls-Royce and Dove soap, he explicitly called direct mail his secret weapon for building his massive agency.
That's huge validation.
It is. Ed Ney, who was the chief executive of Young and Rubicam, which was literally the world's largest advertising agency at the time, made an incredibly bold public prediction.
Yeah.
He said that if you choose to enter direct marketing, you will be entering the most vital, rapidly growing segment of the global economy for the next 50 years.
And he was completely 100% right. As time passed, those exact psychological methods and tracking mechanisms forged in the absolute gutter of cheap mail order were slowly adopted by the biggest, most prestigious companies on Earth.
Yep, the Fortune 100 companies.
Giants like Time Life and Reader's Digest built empires on it. And then, as the technology evolved and the internet arrived, it became the exact foundational blueprint for companies like Dell Computers, and then ultimately Amazon.
Oh, for sure.
Think about it. Amazon is essentially just the world's largest, most efficient, perfectly tracked mail order catalog. Jeff Bezos took the mechanics of the 1950s mail order business and digitized it.
We have to explore why this transition happened. Why did the prestigious multinational Fortune 100 corporations eventually swallow their pride and adopt the exact tactics of the squalid mail order touts?
Oh, you think?
They did it because measurable, trackable methods are undeniably mathematically superior to untrackable ones. For decades, the high-end agencies were selling vague brand awareness campaigns that couldn't be proven to work. But direct marketing offered total accountability to the board of directors. It allowed businesses to calculate exactly how much it costs to acquire a customer, the CAC, and exactly how much lifetime value, the LTV, that customer brought in over a decade. It fundamentally transformed marketing from an artistic gamble into a predictable financial equation.
And it isn't just about selling physical books or laptops or software subscriptions. The underlying principles of direct response are fundamentally about shifting human behavior and driving action.
Exactly.
Now, the text gives us a very clear, powerful example of this in a totally different arena. What proves how universally effective this mechanism is that you see it utilized heavily across the entire political spectrum.
Yes. Bird explicitly notes that direct marketing is the primary engine used in modern politics to shift public opinions, mobilize voters, and most importantly, raise campaign funds.
Okay, real quick though, before we get into the examples, we need to make something crystal clear for the listener.
Absolutely.
We are taking absolute zero political sides here.
None. Left, right, center, we're completely neutral.
Exactly. We are just impartially reporting the source material to show that direct marketing is a neutral, universally effective tool for persuasion. It's a mechanism for action, not an endorsement of the content.
Perfectly said. So, Bird notes that he personally wrote a direct response copy for both the Conservative and Labour parties in the UK. The text also mentions its heavy, successful use by U.S. candidates across the entire ideological map, including Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and George H.W. Bush.
And here's the crucial thing to understand about this. The mechanism itself does not care about ideology. It is completely neutral, like gravity.
Right, gravity.
The psychology of getting a voter to open their wallet or cast a ballot relies on the exact same direct response triggers, identifying an urgent problem, aggravating the fear or hope around that problem, and offering a specific, immediate action to solve it, regardless of whether the message is far left, far right, or dead center.
Precisely. If a politician wants you to donate to their campaign, they don't just run a vague, pleasant billboard about how great their character is and hope you eventually find their website.
No, that would be brand building and they would go broke.
They would. Instead, they send you a highly targeted letter or an urgent email. The subject line addresses a specific looming crisis. The body copy explains why you specifically need to care, and the bottom of the email features a giant, unmissable button asking for a very specific, trackable action. Rush $15 right now to help us stop this.
That is direct marketing in its absolute purest, most distilled form.
It is.
So the practical takeaway for you, the listener, when looking at the evolution of this industry is this. Never, ever dismiss a strategy, a medium, or a tactic just because it lacks prestige or seems unglamorous.
Never.
Do not let your ego or your desire to look sophisticated dictate your toolkit. If a method, whether it's an ugly plain text email, a 10-page long-form sales letter, or a giant yellow coupon drives measurable action and profit, it is highly valuable. Let the cold, hard results speak, not the aesthetic opinions of the design department.
Which leads us perfectly into a fascinating paradox that Bird explores. Because if we accept that direct marketing was perfected on cheap plastic novelties, and if we accept that it works on quick emotional triggers for political donations, how does it handle serious, highly complex, high-stakes decisions?
This is such a great question, and it brings us to the paradox of complexity.
Let's talk about Joe Kosman.
Yes, Bird talks about a guy named Joe Kosman, who was a legend in the space. Kosman made absolute millions of dollars starting right at his kitchen table, and he was selling the most bizarre, low-end novelty items you can possibly imagine.
Just junk, basically.
Basically, he sold plastic ant farms, he sold spud guns, and he sold lifelike, shrunken plastic animal heads that you could hang on your wall.
Pure, unadulterated novelty impulse buys.
Exactly. But then Bird contrasts Joe Kosman's business with a friend who suggested using those exact same mail order techniques to sell life insurance directly to consumers.
A very different product.
At first, Bird was completely baffled by the idea. How do you sell an intangible, highly regulated, incredibly complex product like life insurance through the mail? It seemed way too complicated. People need a broker sitting in their living room to explain it to them, right?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is one of the most profound paradoxes in all of marketing. It is precisely because a product is complex, expensive, or high stakes that it sells so incredibly well through long-form direct marketing.
I'm trying to wrap my head around the psychology of that. Why? Because the modern assumption is that nobody reads anymore. We all have TikTok brain. We have 3-second attention spans.
People have a 3-second attention span for things that bore them or things that are irrelevant to their life.
Okay, true.
But human beings have an infinite attention span for things that solve their deep personal anxieties. Think about a standard 30-second television commercial or a billboard on the highway. You have a fraction of a second to grab attention and deliver a message. You absolutely cannot explain the intricate nuances, the term limits, the premium structures, the tax implications, and the long-term family benefits of a complex life insurance policy in 30 seconds. It is physically impossible.
So what do the massive insurance companies do on TV? They just run an ad with a smiling, attractive family running on a beach, play a catchy, reassuring jingle, flash a logo, and hope for the best.
Exactly. They fall back on vague awareness and emotional association. But a well-crafted, long-form, direct marketing piece, whether that is a detailed 12-page physical letter, a comprehensive printed brochure, or today, a deeply structured long-scroll landing page on a website, allows you to take the anxious prospect by the hand.
It guides them.
Yes, you can guide them through the step-by-step logic. You have the space to educate them. You can anticipate their specific nagging objections and systematically answer them one by one. You provide the deep, detailed, meaty information they actually need to feel safe and confident making a high-stakes financial decision.
Contrast a person mindlessly scrolling TikTok for a quick hit of dopamine with a 55-year-old person sitting at their kitchen table at 11 p.m., deeply worried about their retirement funds, reading every single word of a 12-page sales letter from a financial advisor.
They're going to read every word.
They aren't bored. They are captivated because it's about their survival. So what does this all mean? It means Joe Kosman selling a plastic shrunken skull for $2 and a massive financial firm selling a $100,000 insurance policy are relying on the exact same underlying psychological architecture.
Exactly the same.
You identify the specific prospect, you present the specific benefits that alleviate their pain or fulfill their desire, and you ask for a clear, trackable response. So how should a listener approach these industry rules?
Well, understanding this brings us to a vital point Bird makes about those so-called rules of marketing. Human nature is funny. Once people in any industry realize a specific system works, they immediately try to codify it into strict, unbreakable laws.
Oh, for sure.
In direct marketing, you hear things like, always use red ink for the headline, or never write a sales letter longer than 2 pages, or always end the price in a number 7.
So as someone trying to navigate this, should a listener follow these industry rules or not?
Bird's core tenet is that marketing is as much a fluid art as it is a hard science, simply because human beings are involved, and human beings are perpetually wonderfully surprising.
They don't always do what you expect.
No, they don't. So the lesson here is you must know the rules. You must aggressively study the baseline principles of what has worked historically. You need to know where the established reefs are, but you must never, ever follow them slavishly.
You have to test it.
You have to test everything yourself. Let your own measurable results dictate your actions, not a textbook from 10 years ago. If you test it and your specific audience responds better to a massive 6-page letter than a brief 1-page letter, then for your business, the rule is 6 pages.
It's a philosophy of total empiricism. The customer's actual behavior, where they click, what they buy, what they ignore, is the only truth that matters. Your opinion doesn't matter.
Precisely. The practical takeaway here is vital for anyone selling something complicated. B2B software, high-end consulting, medical devices.
Yeah.
If your product is complex, do not dumb it down just to fit it on a billboard or a short social media post. Do not insult your prospect's intelligence by assuming they won't read. If you are solving a massive problem in their life or business, they will devour every word you write.
They will?
Use direct marketing formats to give your audience the deep, educational, thorough information they need to make a confident, informed decision.
This has been an incredibly eye-opening journey through this first chapter. We started with a desperate young guy observing human nature in a northern pub. We uncovered the massive, expensive vanity of the general brand awareness advertising world. We learned how to truly embrace failure by tracking every single penny. We saw how the ugly duckling of cheap mail order eventually conquered the Fortune 100, and finally, we understood the paradox of why highly complex things required direct, long-form explanations.
It really is a complete fundamental paradigm shift in how you view communication, persuasion, and the very nature of business.
So as we wrap up these key ideas and look at the big picture, how do we synthesize all of this into one clear, memorable insight? If someone forgets everything else we've said, what is the underlying soul of Chapter 1?
The true soul of this chapter, and frankly the soul of any genuinely effective business, is the concept of absolute accountability.
Accountable.
Yes. Direct marketing is not just a medium. It's not just a piece of direct mail or an email sequence or a telemarketing script. It is a fundamental philosophy of total accountability. It strips away the ego of the creator. It strips away the vanity of subjective brand building.
The easy alibis.
Exactly, the alibis. And it replaces all of that comforting, expensive corporate noise with the ultimate undeniable truth teller. The customer's response. When you embrace measurement, you are finally, perhaps for the first time in your career, embracing reality.
That is profoundly powerful
Mm-hmm.
because it democratizes success. It takes the guesswork, the politics, and the schmoozing out of the equation. It means you don't have to be a charismatic genius or a brilliant artist to succeed in business. You just have to be willing to ask the customer a direct question, track what they do, and have the profound humility to listen to their answer, even if it means admitting your brilliantly creative idea was an absolute flop.
Exactly. The winner in the marketplace isn't the one with the flashiest presentation or the biggest ego. The winner is the one who relentlessly tracks the data, finds the truth, and adapts to reality the fastest.
This mindset is just immensely valuable. It forces you to change how you look at every single dollar you spend and every message you put out into the world. Now that we know exactly why measuring results is the absolute lifeblood of any business, the next logical question is, how do we actually build a campaign from scratch that practically guarantees a response?
That's the million-dollar question.
What are the specific psychological levers we need to pull? That is exactly what we are going to explore next time when we dive into Chapter 2 and uncover the 3 graces of direct marketing.
It's going to be a fantastic, highly tactical exploration of how to systematically build those long-term, profitable customer relationships. But before you spend another dime on your business or launch your next project or send your next marketing email, I want you to look at your core message and ask yourself one simple question.
What's that?
If someone wanted to say yes to this right now, have I given them a clear, undeniable, trackable way to do it, or am I just hoping they remember me tomorrow?
What if everything you thought you knew about the purpose of your business was just, well, completely backward? I mean, think about it for a second. What if your primary goal, like waking up every single morning, shouldn't actually be to make a sale today, but rather to buy a friend for life?
Right, which, that forces a complete recalibration of how you view commerce entirely. Because if you accept that premise, you have to fundamentally change your metric of success,
Yeah.
You're no longer measuring the impact of a momentary, isolated transaction. You're evaluating the trajectory of a permanent, evolving relationship.
Exactly. And that shift in perspective is exactly why we are here today. So welcome to this deep dive into Chapter 2 of Drayton Bird's foundational book, Commonsense Direct and Digital Marketing. Today's mission is to explore a framework that Bird calls the 3 graces of direct marketing.
Yeah, the 3 graces. It's such a fascinating concept.
It really is. And for anyone listening right now who is interested in business, entrepreneurship, or, simply understanding how the world of commerce actually functions beneath the surface,
Mm.
understanding these three principles is basically the ultimate shortcut. It's the architectural blueprint for transforming what is usually this unpredictable, stressful scramble for daily sales
Mm.
into a highly predictable, long-term, and fiercely profitable engine.
Oh, absolutely.
So by the time we finish unpacking these concepts today, you will never look at a customer transaction, an advertisement, or even an email in your inbox the same way again.
I mean, that is a bold promise, but the source material absolutely justifies it, because what we're looking at in this chapter, it isn't a collection of fleeting tactical hacks or, social media trends that will expire in 6 months.
Right, no TikTok dances here.
Exactly, no trends. These concepts are foundational. They aggressively strip away the jargon, the ego, and the corporate noise that usually just suffocates modern marketing. Instead, they drill straight down to the bedrock of human psychology. Specifically, why we buy in the first place, and far more importantly, why we remain fiercely loyal and keep buying from the same entities over and over again.
Yeah, and to set the stage for that, the text actually pulls a move I really wasn't expecting for a marketing book. Goes way back in time. Not to the early days of Madison Avenue advertising in the 1950s, but all the way back to ancient China.
Oh, this sage story. I love this part.
It's so good. So there's this fantastic philosophical anecdote about an ancient Chinese sage. His disciples approach him and ask, "Master, if you were given power to set right the affairs of the country, what would you do first?"
Which is a brilliant setup. I mean, if you ask a modern politician or a business leader that exact question, you'd expect a policy answer, right? You'd expect them to talk about overhauling the tax code, reforming agriculture, maybe strengthening the military or cutting regulations.
Totally. But the sage doesn't say any of that. He replies that his absolute first priority would be to ensure that language is used correctly.
Yeah.
His reasoning is just, well, it's devastatingly simple. He says, if what is said is not what is meant, then what ought to be done remains undone.
It's just a profound starting point for a deep dive into direct marketing.
Yeah.
And it perfectly highlights the author's primary frustration with the industry as a whole, because the point being made here is that defining our terms is not just some, academic exercise. It is a strict operational necessity.
Not practical.
Very practical. If a group of professionals don't actually know what the word marketing means, if they all have wildly conflicting definitions in their heads, how can they possibly execute it correctly? If the language is compromised, the action is paralyzed.
Right.
You just end up with a boardroom full of people who are essentially speaking different dialects, resulting in this chaotic flailing rather than a cohesive strategy.
I see this all the time, honestly. People use the word marketing as this massive overflowing junk drawer for literally anything vaguely related to business. Like, one person thinks marketing means designing a clever logo and picking the right shade of blue. Another person thinks it means buying a multi-million-dollar Super Bowl ad that makes people laugh.
Yeah. Or someone else thinks it's just relentlessly blasting promotional emails to a purchased list.
Exactly. And to cut through that fog of ambiguity, the text brings in the heavy artillery, Peter Drucker. For those who might not be familiar, Drucker is widely considered the father of modern management thinking, and his definition of marketing is incredibly provocative. He suggested that the true ultimate aim of marketing is actually to eliminate the need for selling entirely.
Which is such a massive statement.
Let me stop you right there, because if I'm an entrepreneur or a sales director listening to this, that sounds like an absolute paradox, right? Eliminate the need for selling. The whole point of a business is to sell things. How can the goal of marketing be to destroy the sales function?
I know, it sounds contradictory until you examine his underlying logic, which is actually brilliant. Drucker argues that the goal of marketing is to know and understand the customer so intimately well that your product or service fits them perfectly.
Fits them perfectly, okay.
Yeah, because when a product aligns with a customer's specific, deeply felt need with absolute precision, the friction it disappears. The product effectively sells itself. You no longer need aggressive, high-pressure sales tactics. You don't need sleazy, manipulative pitches or constant discounting.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. If you are having to constantly hard sell a prospect, it is usually a glaring symptom that your marketing failed to do its job. The marketing should have already done the heavy lifting by perfectly aligning the solution with the specific individual's problem.
So marketing isn't about shouting louder to force a transaction. It's about understanding the prospect so deeply that the transaction becomes the natural, inevitable next step. And the text immediately reinforces this by pulling in another heavyweight, Theodore Levitt from the Harvard Business School. Levitt managed to boil the entire complex purpose of any business down to just 6 words. He said the purpose of a business is to make and keep a customer, not just to make a sale. Make and keep a customer.
And the inclusion of that word keep completely alters the gravitational pull of a business. It forcefully shifts the horizon away from short-term extraction, where you're just trying to squeeze a few dollars out of someone today, and redirect it toward long-term value creation.
Yeah.
And this applies universally. I mean, whether you are running a nonprofit charity and need lifelong supporters, building a political movement and need reliable voters, or running an e-commerce brand and need repeat buyers, the fundamental operational mandate is identical. Create the relationship and then retain it.
But I need to play devil's advocate for a moment here. Because if Theodore Levitt says the ultimate goal of business is to make and keep a customer, doesn't all advertising theoretically try to do that? Like, how does direct marketing specifically differ from just regular general advertising? If I put a commercial on television, aren't I trying to make and keep a customer?
Well, that is the critical distinction we need to establish before we can even discuss the 3 graces. The text points out that general advertising, the commercials you see on television, the full-page spreads in glossy magazines, usually speaks to people en masse. It is an exercise in broad influence.
It's casting a really wide net.
Exactly. It is trying to gently shape thoughts, feelings, and brand associations with the underlying hope that when the customer eventually, somewhat randomly, reaches the point of decision, say they're standing in a supermarket aisle 3 weeks later, they will subconsciously remember the brand and choose it over a competitor. It is inherently broad. But most importantly, general advertising does not usually demand an immediate measurable action from a specific identifiable individual.
Got it. It feels like the difference between a billboard and a street vendor. Like, if you buy a massive, gorgeous billboard on a busy highway, you are essentially shouting at a faceless crowd. Thousands of cars drive by every hour. You hope the billboard makes the drivers feel positive emotions about your brand, but you have zero idea who is actually driving those cars.
Right, you're totally blind to who they are.
Yeah, you don't know their names, you don't know their specific needs, and you certainly aren't expecting them to pull their cars onto the shoulder right that second, pull out their credit card, and buy your product.
That is an excellent way to visualize it. General advertising is the billboard. Direct marketing, on the other hand, is the street vendor. But it's not a vendor shouting at a crowd. It's a vendor having a focused, one-on-one conversation directly with you. They are looking you in the eye, addressing your specific context, and they are asking for a response right then and there. The source material distills this into a beautifully simple definition. It defines direct marketing as any advertising activity which creates and exploits a direct relationship between you and your prospect or customer as an individual.
As an individual, that really feels like the fulcrum upon which this entire methodology rests.
It is the absolute core of the discipline. It is a fundamental rejection of the masses in favor of the individual. And what's crucial to understand is that this definition covers a massive, diverse range of activities. It's not just sending junk mail.
Right.
The text gives several fascinating everyday examples to illustrate how versatile this is. For instance, it could be a person standing on a busy street corner with a clipboard and a questionnaire. They stop you and ask a few targeted questions about whether you want to save money on your household expenses. That interaction eventually leads to a highly personalized visit from an insurance salesperson later that week. That is direct marketing.
The text also mentions something as low-tech and simple as a handwritten note pinned up in a local shop window selling a used ghetto blaster.
Exactly. Or consider a massive financial campaign, like an advertisement in the national newspaper, explicitly inviting readers to apply directly for shares in British Telecom.
Okay, wow.
The text even points out that the classified section of a newspaper, which has historically been the most heavily read section for a lot of people, is pure, unfiltered direct marketing. In every single one of these scenarios, regardless of the scale or the medium, the advertiser is abandoning the broad broadcast approach. They are making direct contact, bypassing any middlemen, and explicitly trying to initiate a relationship with you, specifically as an individual.
So if we pause here and crystallize a practical takeaway for you, the listener, from this first overarching concept, it really demands an audit of your own communication, whatever your organization happens to be. Maybe you are launching a B2B SaaS startup, running a local brick-and-mortar bakery, or organizing a community charity event. You have to ask yourself what you are actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, what's the real goal?
Right. Because if your goal is just to generate ambient noise and vaguely increase brand awareness, you are playing a very expensive game of hope. But if you are to planning direct marketing, your goal is completely different. You are structuring your communication to ask for a direct action. You are initiating a one-on-one relationship. You are putting an offer out into the world and asking a specific individual to raise their hand and say, yes, I am interested, and here's how you can reach me.
And the moment they raise their hand, the dynamic shifts entirely. That brings us to the very heart of the chapter's thesis. Because once you have initiated that contact, how do you actually manage, scale, and monetize that relationship without losing the individual touch?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is. And to answer that, the author breaks the methodology down into 3 core sequential principles, which he beautifully terms the 3 graces of direct marketing.
I had to say, calling them the 3 graces adds this almost mythological, elevated weight to the concepts. It elevates it from mere business tactics to a fundamental philosophy of commerce. So let's dive into the first grace. We just established that direct marketing is obsessively focused on the individual. But from a purely logistical standpoint, how does a modern business actually execute that? Like, if I have a market of 1 million people, how do I practically separate one single person from that faceless crowd?
That logistical challenge is exactly what the first grace resolves. The first grace is defined as the act of isolating your prospects and customers as individuals to discover what differentiates them and then putting that invaluable specific knowledge into a database.
But hang on, traditional marketing does try to target people, don't they? I mean, if you sit in any Madison Avenue agency meeting, you will inevitably hear marketers talking at length about their target demographic. Doesn't that count as isolating the prospect?
They attempt to target, sure, but they do it through a lens of extreme aggregation. Listen carefully to the specific language traditional marketing uses, because the text highlights this contrast perfectly. A traditional marketer relying on demographic modeling will say something like, our target market is B1C2 housewives aged 24 to 45 in the Southwest living in owner-occupied properties.
Wow. That is incredibly clinical. It sounds like you were describing a biological specimen, not an actual human being.
It completely dehumanizes them. It groups thousands, or potentially millions, of entirely unique individuals with different fears, different aspirations, and different daily struggles into a single, broad, faceless monolith based entirely on zip codes and income bracket.
Right.
And to understand why we do this and why it's flawed, the text takes us on a fascinating historical detour. Before the Industrial Revolution, commerce was inherently deeply personal. You didn't buy from a faceless corporation. You went to the local village merchant.
Right, the guy who lived down the street from you.
Exactly. And because of that physical proximity, the merchant knew your name. He knew your family history. He knew exactly what kind of flour or cloth you preferred. Most importantly, because he saw you every week, he knew your consumption patterns. He knew exactly when you were likely to run out of a specific staple and need more. There was a direct, intimate, personal bond built on a continuous stream of observed data.
But obviously, a local merchant can only scale that intimacy so far, right? You can only know a few hundred people that well. Then mass production changes the equation entirely.
Precisely. The Industrial Revolution introduced mass production. Suddenly, factories were pumping out thousands of identical goods, and to sell those massive quantities of goods, businesses necessitated mass communication. The intimate, one-to-one dialogue of the village merchant was no longer viable at that scale. The direct merchant-to-customer bond was severed. Businesses started speaking to the masses through broad advertising because it was the only logistical option available to move that volume of product.
We basically sacrificed intimacy for scale, but the author's arguing that we don't have to make that sacrifice anymore because we have something the 19th century factory owners didn't have.
We have the computer database.
Oh, yes.
Technology allows us to renew that ancient personal link, but on a global scale. We can now combine the highly personalized salesmanship and intimate knowledge of the village merchant with the massive reach of modern communication. We aren't forced to blast the same generic message to everyone. We can isolate the individual, systematically discover their special characteristics and preferences, and then speak to them in a highly customized way based entirely on their unique relationship with us.
The text provides a really concrete example of how this practically plays out, using a car manufacturer. Let's say a car company is launching a new vehicle. The traditional mass market approach would be to spend millions of dollars blasting generic TV ads showing the car driving fast on an empty, winding mountain road, hoping someone in that B1C2 demographic is watching, and happens to need a car.
Which is incredibly inefficient. So inefficient. So instead, utilizing the first grace, they take a different approach. They run a much more targeted ad, perhaps in a specialized magazine or a digital platform, not trying to sell the car instantly, but simply offering a beautiful, comprehensive information brochure about their range of vehicles. But here is the critical pivot. When the prospect requests the brochure, the car company doesn't just blindly put it in the mail and hope for the best. They include a detailed questionnaire.
And this is where the isolation happens. They ask the prospect very specific questions. Did you enjoy the pictures in the brochure? More importantly, what are your future requirements for a vehicle? What features do you prioritize? What do you absolutely dislike in a car? And crucially, when exactly are you planning to make your next vehicle purchase?
Now, if the prospect takes the time to answer that questionnaire and send it back, a massive transformation has just occurred in the relationship. The car company has successfully isolated an individual. They have physically moved this person from being a faceless statistic in a demographic monolith into a highly specific dynamic profile sitting on their database. And you really have to stop and think about the sheer operational power of possessing that specific knowledge. The car company is no longer guessing. They are no longer hoping the prospect sees a Mountain Road commercial. They can now perfectly map their follow-up offers to that specific individual's exact stated needs.
It's brilliant.
The text affectionately refers to this ongoing process as buttering them up over time. If the questionnaire reveals that this specific individual is actively looking for a large family SUV with third-row seating, and they plan to buy in exactly 18 months when their current lease expires, the company doesn't send them sports car brochures.
That would be a waste of money.
Exactly. They tailor a very specific, highly relevant series of communications over those ensuing 18 months, completely customized to the SUV need, ensuring that when month 18 arrives, the prospect feels so understood and valued that they inevitably buy from you.
What I find really fascinating is that this isn't just an alternative to mass marketing. It actually makes mass marketing work better. There's a really interesting piece of research mentioned in the sources that shows how this direct, individualized approach supercharges the broader advertising efforts.
Ah, yes, the synergy research.
Yeah.
This is an incredibly powerful data point that bridges the gap between direct and general advertising.
Yeah, an agency conducted a major piece of research in 1985 regarding a campaign for an airline. They were running television commercials, but they were also doing direct mail. And they discovered something staggering. They found that if a direct mail piece explicitly featured a visual scene pulled directly from a television commercial, awareness of that television commercial as long as 4 months later was 48% higher among those who received the mail shot compared to a control panel who hadn't received the mail. 48% higher recall 4 months later.
It completely shatters the idea that these methods exist in isolated silos. It proves that by reaching out to the individual directly, by putting something tangible in their hands that speaks to them, you forcefully anchor the broader mass communication deep in their memory. You orchestrate your messaging so that the highly personal, direct impact amplifies and sustains the power of the expensive mass media. They feed off each other, provided the individual relationship has been established first.
So if we synthesize this into a practical takeaway for the listener, it's a massive wake-up call regarding how you handle your audience data. You have to stop treating your audience as a monolith. If you are sitting there with a spreadsheet of 10,000 email addresses and all you know is their email address, you do not actually have a database yet. You just have a list of targets.
Well said.
To execute the first grace, you need to start engineering ways to capture individual data points. Ask them questions. Send out surveys. What are their specific preferences? What have they bought in the past? What articles do they click on? You have to use every single interaction to gather intelligence so you can isolate them from the crowd and make your future communications hyper-relevant to their specific reality.
Because relevance is the only thing that consistently cuts through the modern noise. If you are relevant, you are welcome. If you are irrelevant, you are spam. Which perfectly sets up the next logical question in this progression. Okay, you have executed the first grace. You have successfully isolated this individual, you have them in a sophisticated database, and you know an immense amount of detail about their preferences. What do you actually do with them now?
Right, because the goal isn't just to be a stalker with a lot of data. You have to monetize it. But you don't just jump out, yell, buy my product right now, and then vanish into the ether if they say yes.
Exactly. The initial sale is merely the starting line, not the finish line. And that brings us to the second grace. The second grace of direct marketing is the active, deliberate construction of a continuing relationship. You accomplish this by systematically offering products and services that your accumulated knowledge of the customer tells you will genuinely appeal to them, and doing it precisely when they are most statistically likely to be interested.
A continuing relationship. This ties directly back to Theodore Levitt's definition we discussed earlier, specifically the mandate to keep a customer.
It is the operationalization of Levitt's philosophy. The text stresses a harsh economic reality that every business owner eventually learns. In almost any industry, the single biggest, most punishing cost you will ever face is recruiting a brand new customer for the very first time. The cost of acquisition is brutal. Therefore, the real sustainable profit, what the author colorfully refers to as the gravy, is almost exclusively made on subsequent sales. You learn about the individual and earn their trust on the first transaction, which often yields little to no profit, but you build your wealth on the second, third, and fourth transactions.
This is where I think a massive psychological shift has to happen for most people, because it really goes against our instincts.
Yeah.
A lot of people approach business like it's a desperate series of one-night stands. You are heavily focused on the transaction right in front of you. You want the sale today, you want the dopamine hit of the revenue, and you want to extract maximum profit immediately. But building a continuing relationship, it's much more akin to traditional dating.
How do you mean? Walk us through that parallel.
Well, think about going on a first date. You don't sit down at the table before the waiter has even brought the appetizers and immediately ask the other person to marry you. If you do that, you are going to scare them away instantly. You haven't earned the right to ask for that level of commitment.
It would be highly ineffective, socially disastrous, and probably terrifying for the other person.
Exactly. Instead, you invest in the relationship incrementally over time. On the first date, you just try to have a good conversation. You ask questions. You actively listen to learn what they value, what they find funny, what they care about. You provide value by being engaging. You might pay for dinner, taking a small financial loss up front. You do all of this knowing that the long-term partnership, the eventual marriage, is where the true, profound, lasting value actually lies. You delay immediate extraction for long-term equity.
That is an exceptionally accurate analogy for the second grace. You are pacing the relationship based on trust. And the text provides a stunning historical example of a business owner who understood this dynamic at a master level. The author describes an old, rather famous newspaper advertisement that featured a completely counterintuitive headline. It read, "Publisher seeks advertising agency to help in losing money."
Help in losing money. In a world where every single business book is screaming about maximizing margins and instant ROI, that has to be one of the most arresting headlines ever written.
It stops you in your tracks because it violently violates our assumptions about business. Like, why on earth would a rational publisher actively seek a partner to help him lose money? But the publisher wasn't crazy, he just fundamentally understood the second grace. He knew that to build a massive, highly profitable publishing empire, he first had to invest heavily and intentionally take a calculated financial loss on the front end to acquire readers' names and aggressively build out his database.
So he was buying the audience.
Yes. He was entirely willing to bleed money on the initial acquisition because his internal metrics prove that he could profit enormously from the long-term relationship on the back end through subscription renewals, book sales, and supplementary offers.
This brings us to a concept that is essentially the holy grail of modern marketing, which the text highlights through real client examples. We are talking about lifetime value, or LTV. The text mentions one specific company that had meticulously tracked their data. They knew with absolute certainty that every single time they recruited a new name from a specific marketing offer, they would generate exactly £12 in gross profit from that individual over the ensuing 3 years.
Stop and consider the immense operational confidence that specific metric gives a business leader. If you have done the math and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that every new qualified name you add to your database is guaranteed to bring in £12 of profit over a 3-year horizon, it completely changes how you view your marketing budget.
Right, because it becomes an investment equation.
Exactly. How much are you willing to spend today to acquire that name? You are no longer demanding instant profitability. You might be perfectly willing to spend £10, £11, or perhaps even £11.99 just to get them in the door today. You are operating at zero profit or even a slight loss on day one because you are mathematically assured of the long-term yield.
But surely that timeline is too long for most businesses. I
Yeah.
mean, if I'm a bootstrap startup founder listening to this, and you tell me I have to spend all my cash today to acquire a customer and I won't see the profit for 3 years, I'm going to panic. I have to make payroll next Friday. Does this concept of delaying profit for lifetime value actually apply across the board, or is it just for massive companies with deep pockets?
It is a totally valid fear, and cash flow is always the ultimate constraint for a small business. You cannot spend cash you don't have. However, the principle of lifetime value applies universally, even if the timelines differ. A local coffee shop might have a lifetime value horizon of 3 months, knowing a new customer will return 12 times in that window.
That makes sense. The scale adjusts?
Right. The text explicitly mentions another example of a massive European conglomerate that operates with such vast resources and sophisticated modeling that they are perfectly happy waiting 2 entirely full years before realizing a single cent of profit on a newly recruited name. 2 years of nurturing the relationship before they cross into the black.
That requires an iron stomach.
It does, but it also requires a profound understanding of the math. The author states a fundamental truth very bluntly in this section. He says there are no quick killings in direct marketing, only suicides by those who don't understand the vital principles that govern success.
Wow. Only suicides.
Yeah. If you are a business owner who is exclusively obsessed with the immediate margin of the very first transaction, if you demand that every single ad pays for itself and generates profit today, you are incredibly vulnerable. You will inevitably be outspent, outmaneuvered, and eventually crushed by a competitor who understands the lifetime value of a continuing relationship. They will gladly outbid you for ad space, take the initial loss to steal the customer from you, and then monetize them over the next 3 years while you go out of business waiting for an immediate return.
Which gives the listener an incredibly vital, practical takeaway here. This isn't just a marketing tactic. It is a fundamental mindset shift regarding how you build your economic engine. You cannot panic if your first transaction with a newly acquired customer barely breaks even, or even if it operates at a slight calculated loss, provided you have a rigorous, tested system in place for follow-up. You have to stop viewing the first sale as the entire game. You need to engineer your entire business model, your product suite, and your communication strategy around the second, third, and fourth interactions. That follow-up sequence is where the actual wealth of a business is generated.
But your previous point about the bootstrap startup raises a very legitimate, almost existential threat for a lot of business owners. If the strategy dictates that we invest heavily up front, potentially bleeding cash on the first transaction, with the solemn hope of building these lucrative long-term relationships, how do we ensure we aren't just driving the company off a cliff? Like, how do we know the math will actually work out before we go entirely bankrupt?
Exactly. If I'm spending my hard-earned capital acquiring names and just praying they pay off in 2 years, I won't sleep a wink. It feels like gambling.
And that profound anxiety perfectly necessitates the third grace. The third grace is the mechanism that allows the entrepreneur to sleep at night. It is the ultimate safety net. We are talking about the power of testing and controllability. Specifically, it is the rigorous ability to measure the response of specific individuals to particular messages in particular media to see exactly, empirically, what works and what doesn't.
If we tie this back to the philosophical groundwork we laid earlier, this leads us right back to Peter Drucker again, doesn't it?
It does. Drucker famously declared, the first objective of marketing is to avoid making a loss. Direct marketing, when executed in alignment with the third grace, removes the terrifying plunge-in-the-dark risk from business strategy because every single action is highly controllable and measurable.
But let's clarify that term for the listener. What exactly do we mean by controllable in this context? Because, you can't control if a customer actually opens their wallet.
You can't control their ultimate decision, but you control every variable leading up to it, and you measure the outcome perfectly. It means you are not at the mercy of vague hopes or abstract branding theories. You meticulously dictate the exact script or copy. You select the specific, isolated audience segment. You choose the precise timing of when the message lands. And most crucially, this is the defining feature, because you always include a specific response device, like a unique tracking coupon, a dedicated phone number, or a customized website link you know exactly, down to the single digit how many people took the desired action.
Let's heavily contrast this with the traditional general advertising approach we discussed with the billboard analogy. Imagine you are a marketing director and you convince your board to spend a massive chunk of your annual budget, say $500,000, on a beautiful, full-page spread in a premier national magazine just to build brand awareness. 6 months later, the board asks you, did it work? How do you measure success?
That is the eternal tragedy of general advertising. You can't actually answer the board's question with any financial certainty. You might commission a costly third-party survey to see if brand sentiment or aided recall went up by 3%, but that abstract data doesn't tell the CFO if the ad actually generated enough revenue to cover its $500,000 cost.
It's just guesswork at that point.
It is. The text makes a rather funny but darkly tragic observation about how general advertising is historically evaluated in the absence of hard data. Because they can't measure sales directly, the campaign is usually judged by whether the CEO liked the font, or whether the client's spouse thought it was clever, or, worst of all, if it won a shiny award at an industry creative festival.
Right. And the text provides a brutal cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing creative awards over measurable response. It mentions a regional beer company in New York called Peel's. They decided to run a series of highly creative television commercials. And creatively, they were an absolute triumph. They were so incredibly popular, so funny and engaging, that when the network eventually took them off the air, the general public actually demanded they be brought back.
I mean, if you are an advertising agency, that sounds like the ultimate validation. The public loves your ads so much, they are protesting its removal.
That sounds like a marketer's dream scenario.
Yeah.
Until you actually look at the ledger, the text notes that, tragically, every single time they ran those wildly popular, highly likable, culturally relevant commercials, the actual sales of the beer went down.
Oh, man. Which perfectly illustrates the ultimate fatal danger of not adhering to the third grace. An advertisement can be so incredibly clever, so beautifully shot, or so hilarious that it completely overshadows the actual merits of the product it is supposed to be selling. The audience is highly entertained, they love the joke, they remember the punchline, but they don't buy the beer. The ad served the ego of the creative director, but it actively harmed the wallet of the business owner.
This is a massive trap. So how specifically does the third grace testing and controllability prevent a business from falling into the Peel's beer trap?
By enforcing a strict methodology of testing small before you ever spend big. In a direct marketing framework, you never roll out a massive, expensive, company-wide campaign based on a gut feeling, a focus group, or because the creative director thinks it's a masterpiece. Instead, you take a very small, statistically significant sample of your database. You send out your new message to that small group, and then you wait and count the measurable monetary response.
To just follow the numbers.
You track the coupons. You count the clicks. Did this specific message generate a profit? If the answer is yes, you confidently scale it up to the larger list. If the answer is no, you haven't bankrupted the company. You simply tweak the headline, adjust the offer, and test again on another small sample.
You essentially submit your ideas to the ultimate judge, the market. You let the customer's wallets dictate your strategy, completely removing your own ego and assumptions from the equation.
Precisely. And you can test absolutely everything. You can run an A/B test pitting two different headlines against each other to see which generates a higher conversion rate. You can test two different price points, say $49 versus $59, to see which yields maximum total revenue. You can even test environmental variables, like mailing your offer on a Tuesday versus a Saturday. Every single test you run generates hard, empirical data about what your specific, isolated market actually values and wants to buy. It fundamentally eliminates business anxiety because your decisions are no longer guided by guesswork or boardroom debates. They are guided by the undeniable reality of consumer behavior.
Which provides us with an incredibly clear, practical takeaway. If you are listening to this, you have to stop guessing what your market wants based on your own intuition, or what looks aesthetically pleasing in a PowerPoint presentation. Your assumptions are a liability. You need to adopt a culture of relentless testing. Put out small, measurable, low-risk tests. Let the empirical data tell you the unvarnished truth about what your customers actually value.
So, if we review the architecture so far, we have the complete three greases. First, we isolate the individual to truly know them. Second, we build a continuing relationship to maximize their lifetime value. Third, we relentlessly test our offers to ensure we are serving them profitably and minimizing risk.
It's a solid framework.
It is. But successfully executing this architecture brings up a very practical, almost psychological question about day-to-day operations.
Yeah, because we aren't just dealing with abstract database entries here. We are dealing with human beings. If we have isolated these individuals and we know they are highly valuable to our long-term survival, how exactly should we treat them on a daily basis? What is the standard of care required to keep them fiercely loyal?
The author provides a very clear, uncompromising philosophy for this, and it's rooted deeply in customer service and the frequency of communication. The core operational rule is this: You must give the customer a significantly better service than they actually expect to receive, and you must calibrate the frequency of your communication based directly on the strength of your established relationship.
The text uses a phenomenal quote to anchor this idea. It's from Jerome S. Hardy, who was the founder of Time Life Books, which was an absolute juggernaut in direct marketing back in the day. He gathered his staff together right at the outset of launching the business, and he set the standard. He told them, "We are going to give our customers a service better than they have any right to expect."
Better than they have any right to expect. I want to linger on that phrase for a second because it is a magnificent, radical standard. He isn't saying meet industry standards. He isn't saying satisfy the customer. He is demanding an almost unreasonable level of proactive service. The text argues compellingly that direct marketing, at its absolute core, is fundamentally a customer service tool.
How so, though? Because people usually think of marketing as selling, not serving.
Well, think about what genuinely good direct marketing actually accomplishes for a consumer. It performs a service. It clarifies highly complex products by taking the time to explain them thoroughly in a long-form letter or a detailed brochure rather than a frantic 30-second commercial. It provides a safe, pressure-free environment for shy or introverted people who might not want to deal with a pushy, aggressive salesperson in a retail store. It allows people the ultimate convenience to research, deliberate, and shop comfortably at their own pace from the privacy of their own home. It is inherently designed to serve the customer's convenience and need for information.
I see that. It is providing clarity and removing friction. But this philosophy of constant service and communication brings up a massive point of friction. It's a question I think every single beginner to direct marketing asks. I know I struggled with it when I first started building an email list. If the goal is to build a continuing relationship and serve them, what does this actually mean for how often I should email or mail my list? If I'm constantly in their inbox sending them offers and newsletters, won't I just become an absolute nuisance, annoy them, and force them to unsubscribe?
Oh, yeah. It is undoubtedly the single most common fear among modern marketers, the fear of list fatigue, the fear of being perceived as a spammer. But the author's answer to this fear is brilliant because it completely reframes the entire psychological dynamic of the interaction. He goes back to what he calls his exceedingly simple three-step view of business. Locate a prospect, make them a customer, and then turn them into a friend.
Locate a prospect, make a customer, turn into a friend. It sounds wholesome, but how does it solve the frequency problem?
Because it dictates behavior based on the specific stage of the relationship. Let's play this out. Think about your own life. How often do you voluntarily communicate with a complete stranger?
Almost never. If I talk to a stranger, it's strictly functional, like asking for directions or ordering a coffee. I certainly don't want them calling me every day.
Exactly. Now shift the context. How often do you communicate with a genuinely good friend?
All the time. We text constantly throughout the day. We call each other. We send each other funny articles or links to things we know the other person will like.
And crucially, do you get annoyed when your good friend texts you 3 times in one day?
No, of course not, because I value what they have to say. I know them, I trust them, and I actively enjoy the relationship. Even if they send me a link to something I don't want to buy, I'm not offended that they thought of me.
That is the exact psychological dynamic you are trying to meticulously engineer with your database. You must treat people in a way that matches the specific nature of your relationship with them. If someone is merely a prospect, if they are still effectively a stranger who just downloaded a free guide, you don't aggressively bombard them with 3 hard sell emails a day. You have to earn the right to increase frequency. But if someone is an established repeat customer, if you have treated them well, served them better than they expect, and elevated them to the status of a friend, you can and absolutely should communicate with them frequently.
But there has to be a catch. You can't just send them garbage.
Right. The massive caveat, of course, is that your communications must be hyper-relevant and genuinely valuable to them. This ties back to the first grace, using the data you've isolated. If you are consistently sending them information, entertainment, or offers that they actually care about, frequent communication doesn't break the bond. It actively strengthens it.
The source material highlights an incredible real-world case study to prove this point, featuring the outdoor clothing company LL Bean. Historically, they operated like most catalog companies, mailing their massive catalog out to their database 2 times a year, spring and fall. Then they decided to drastically increase their frequency, eventually ramping up to mailing their customers 13 times a year. They more than sextupled their communication.
Which a lot of people probably told them was crazy.
Totally crazy. And what happened? Their customers didn't revolt. Their sales didn't just increase proportionally, their sales grew tenfold.
Tenfold growth simply by increasing the frequency of contact. And they achieved that because they fundamentally understood that their established customers actually liked them and wanted to hear from them. The author points out a fascinating psychological flaw in most businesses. He notes that many marketers communicate far too rarely because they operate under the incredibly arrogant assumption that the customer will miraculously happen to be in the exact mood to buy on the specific Tuesday their biannual catalog finally drops.
Which is absurd when you think about it.
It is absurd. People do not buy when you are ready to sell. People buy when they are ready to buy. Their lives are chaotic, needs arise unpredictably. By communicating frequently, consistently, and delivering value every time, you ensure that you maintain top-of-mind awareness. You ensure that when the customer's internal trigger finally flips and they decide it's time to make a purchase, you are the only logical entity they consider because you've been there all along.
So, the immediate takeaway here is that you need to fundamentally reframe your fear of communication. You cannot hide from your own customers because you are paralyzed by the fear of annoying them. Provided you have done the rigorous work of the first and second graces, provided you truly understand them and have something genuinely valuable or interesting to share, you should communicate with them as frequently as you would a good friend.
And this leads us to the grand culmination of the chapter. When a business actually manages to do all of this simultaneously, when you execute the three graces perfectly, when you test relentlessly, when you isolate the data, and when you serve your customers with the frequency and care of a friendship, something incredibly powerful happens to the underlying economics of your business. It triggers a massive, unstoppable compounding effect.
Yes. This is hands down my favorite conceptual framework in the entire chapter. Drayton describes this compounding mechanism as the spiral of prosperity.
The spiral of prosperity. It is a meticulous, highly logical cycle that explains step by step exactly how a direct marketing business inevitably achieves total market dominance over traditional competitors. It is essentially the physics of business growth. Let's walk the listener through the specific mechanics of this spiral.
Okay, let's trace the spiral. It starts with step 1, new customer recruitment. This is the entry point. You spend capital to acquire a new customer. As we discussed with the publisher example earlier, maybe you just break even here, or maybe you strategically take a slight financial loss on this first step just to get them onto the database.
Correct. You have acquired the asset, which immediately leads to step 2, higher value per name. Because you are diligently building a continuing relationship, the second grace, and providing them with unexpected levels of service, that customer begins to trust you. Consequently, they buy more frequently and spend more money with you over time than they would with a transactional competitor. Their lifetime value begins to climb.
Which naturally leads directly into step 3, more profit. A higher lifetime value per customer unequivocally means more aggregate profit flowing into your business.
Now, step 4 is where the spiral truly begins to accelerate and where most businesses fail. Improved creative ideas. A traditional business owner might just pocket that extra profit as a bonus. But in the spiral of prosperity, you systematically reinvest a portion of that new profit directly into testing the third grace. You use the capital to aggressively test new copywriting, new compelling offers, and new media channels. Because you have more capital generated from the back end, you can afford to test more aggressively than anyone else, which inevitably leads you to discover better, more persuasive marketing communications.
Oh, that makes sense. Then we hit step 5, more offers. Because you are constantly interacting with them and testing new ideas, you understand the customer intimately. You can now confidently develop and introduce brand new, highly targeted products and services that you mathematically know they will want to buy. You are expanding your product suite based on data, not guesswork.
Which refines the mechanism for step 6, better targeting. Through all of this ongoing interaction, purchasing history, and relentless testing, you learn exactly who buys what. Your database becomes incredibly sophisticated. You can segment your list with surgical precision. You stop wasting precious marketing dollars sending the wrong offers to the wrong people. Your overall marketing efficiency skyrockets because every single message is hyper-relevant.
And finally, that incredible efficiency brings us to step 7A, growing database. All of this efficiency, combined with the compounded profits, loops you right back to the beginning of the spiral. But you are now operating with a massive unfair advantage. You now have the accumulated capital and the LTV metrics to afford to spend significantly more money to acquire new customers than any of your competitors can possibly afford.
And that, right there, is the ultimate, undeniable competitive edge in any industry. Let's break it down to simple math to illustrate how devastating this is to a competitor. Let's say your competitor operates traditionally. They make a $50 profit per customer because they treat the transaction like a one-night stand. They only sell to them once. Therefore, they can only afford to spend up to $49 on advertising to acquire a customer. If they spend $50, they go bankrupt.
Right, they have no margin for error.
Exactly. But you, because you are executing the spiral of prosperity, know that you make $200 per customer over a 3-year lifetime value. Therefore, you can confidently afford to spend $100 today to acquire a customer.
The implications of that are brutal. If I can spend $100 to acquire a customer and my competitor can only spend $49, I win. I will buy up all the premium advertising space. I will outbid them on every digital platform. I will dominate the market visibility. My competitor will slowly, agonizingly suffocate because they literally cannot afford to keep up with my acquisition costs without bankrupting themselves.
Exactly. There is a famous axiom in marketing that summarizes this perfectly. The company that can afford to spend the most to acquire a customer wins. It is a law of economic physics. And you can only afford to spend the most if you have maximized the back-end lifetime value through this continuous spiral of relationship and testing.
It's exactly like a giant mechanical flywheel. The hardest part is getting it to turn that very first time. But once you get it spinning, the momentum just builds and builds upon itself. Every single dollar of generated profit acts as kinetic energy to spin the wheel even faster, reinvesting into learning more about the individual, testing sharper offers, and extracting more long-term value to fund an even more aggressive acquisition strategy tomorrow.
It fundamentally forces you to stop looking at marketing as a linear, sunk expense. It's not just a painful line item on a budget spreadsheet that you resent paying every month. Marketing, when executed as a spiral, is a circular, compounding engine of unstoppable growth.
Treat it as an engine. Stop looking at your marketing budget as an expense and start looking at it as the fuel for a compounding engine. That is the ultimate practical takeaway for this entire section.
This raises a very important, almost philosophical question for anyone listening as we begin to wrap up all these dense ideas. When you look at everything we have covered today in totality, from the ancient Chinese definitions to the 3 graces, to the necessity of testing, to treating customers like friends, and finally, the spiral of prosperity, what is really at the heart of all this? What is the core DNA of this strategy?
That's a good question.
The true soul of Chapter 2 is the profound realization that the most devastatingly profitable business strategy in the world is, quite simply, profound empathy.
Profound empathy. That is not a word you usually hear in a hardcore business strategy discussion.
No, it isn't. But look at the mechanics. By rigorously using the 3 graces, you are isolating individuals because you genuinely want to truly understand their specific problems and desires. You are meticulously building a lifelong relationship because you want to serve them over the long haul. And you are relentlessly testing because you have the humility to admit you don't have all the answers, and you want to ensure your messages resonate with their actual lived reality, not your corporate assumptions.
That makes total sense.
You are taking the cold, mechanical, often cynical process of marketing and transforming it into an ongoing, highly lucrative, mutually beneficial friendship. It is, in essence, empathy weaponized for commercial success.
I think that is the perfect summary. Empathy weaponized for mutual benefit. It completely demolishes and rebuilds how you view a database. It forces you to realize that a database is not just a digital list of targets to be exploited. It is a fragile, incredibly valuable ecosystem of human relationships that you have a responsibility to nurture. So, as we conclude this deep dive, I want to leave you, the listener, with a provocative challenge. When you finish this audio, take a hard look at your own customer list today. Look at the metrics of the people who have bought from you, subscribed to you, or interacted with your project. Ask yourself honestly, are you treating them like passing strangers, just a faceless demographic to be occasionally blasted with promotional noise? Or are you investing in them like lifelong friends, learning about their individual needs, respecting their time, serving them beyond their expectations, and actively guiding them through a spiral of prosperity?
It's a question every business owner needs to answer.
Keep that specific question burning in the back of your mind, because in our next deep dive, we are moving into Chapter 3, where we'll discover how direct marketing can stretch far beyond what we've discussed today. We will explore how it can unlock massive, hidden reservoirs of profit, completely irrespective of what you are selling or what industry you operate in. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you then.
What if the biggest mistake you are making in your business isn't your product, but the fact that you are wasting a fortune trying to sell it to absolutely everyone?
Yeah, it is a pretty painful question to ask yourself. But I mean, if you actually look at the underlying mathematics of how businesses grow,
Yeah.
it's it's often the most necessary one.
Right, because most people view direct marketing as just, cheap junk mail or digital spam.
Exactly.
But what if it is actually the most sophisticated tool you have to turn a one-time buyer into a lifelong friend and completely outmaneuver massive corporations in the process?
Yeah, that's the real hook here.
So in this deep dive, we are exploring why direct marketing goes far beyond just the transactional nature of selling products.
Hmm.
We're going to explore how it builds crucial, highly profitable relationships, isolates the exact right prospects out of a sea of noise, and, can even salvage a failing brand.
Yeah.
If you are serious about business or entrepreneurship, understanding the mechanics of these relationships is just essential knowledge.
And I think we should probably validate the skepticism right out of the gate here.
Oh, absolutely.
Because when the phrase direct marketing gets thrown around, the immediate mental image for most people is an overflowing email inbox.
Right, or a mailbox physically stuffed with glossy, totally irrelevant flyers for local pizza places.
Exactly. It has earned a bit of a notorious reputation, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure.
But the thing is, by the time we finish walking through the source material today, you're going to view your customer interactions through a completely different lens.
A much more profitable lens, hopefully.
Right. One that is mathematically precise, incredibly efficient, and yet deeply, fundamentally human. We are moving away from the idea of just shouting at the masses and moving toward the science of whispering to the right individual.
I love that, the concept of whispering to the exact right person, because it really shatters the preconceived boundaries of what this tool is even supposed to do.
It really does.
There is this pervasive, almost stubborn misconception in the business world that direct marketing is just permanently relegated to the bargain bin.
Like it's only meant for selling cheap pitching gadgets late at night.
Yeah, exactly, or mail order trinkets. But the text makes a really compelling case that the scope of the medium is practically infinite.
Yeah, the scope is huge.
When the underlying psychology is applied correctly, you can sell almost anything. We are talking highly abstract intangibles, high-end luxury items, complex B2B services.
Because the core philosophy isn't about the price point of the item at all.
Right.
It is about establishing an unfiltered direct link between you and the prospect, and then, systematically exploiting that link to build a long-term relationship.
What is genuinely fascinating to me, and maybe slightly terrifying if you're a shareholder, is how often professional marketers fundamentally misunderstand the boundaries of this tool.
Well, they get it wrong all the time.
They try to force the wrong product through the right channel, or vice versa.
Yeah, the author actually shares this brilliant, somewhat humbling anecdote about his early days in the industry. He was a young, overconfident creative.
Which is a dangerous combination.
The most dangerous. And he actually tried to engineer a campaign to sell Pepsi-Cola via direct mail.
Okay, which, from a consumer behavior standpoint, just sounds like an incredible uphill battle.
Oh, the friction there is massive.
It's like an insurmountable amount of friction.
Right, and predictably, the campaign was a catastrophic failure.
I mean, I would hope so.
But the autopsy of that failure is where the real education lies. You have to ask, why did it fail?
Was it just the cost?
Well, it failed because Pepsi is the ultimate mass market impulse buy.
Ah, great.
You're walking down the aisle of grocery store, you are thirsty, you see the blue can, you grab it, it requires zero cognitive load.
You're not thinking about it.
Exactly. Now, contrast that with the mechanics of direct mail.
Right.
You do not sit down at your kitchen table, open a beautifully crafted, personalized letter, read 3 pages of compelling, emotionally resonant copy.
And then decide to fill out a form, find a stamp, and mail in a coupon just to receive a single can of soda 2 weeks later.
Exactly. The medium of direct marketing demands a certain type of considered engagement, and it fundamentally clashed with the low-stakes psychology of that specific purchase.
So the failure wasn't the copy itself, it was the structural misalignment between the product's natural buying cycle and the required consumer effort.
Yeah, perfectly said.
That makes perfect sense. But if a mass market physical impulse buy is the wrong fit, the natural assumption is that complex, invisible products would be even harder to sell.
You would think so, right?
Yeah. Yet the text points out that selling something completely abstract like life insurance actually thrives in this environment.
It thrives precisely because of that required considered engagement we just talked about.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
So the text discusses a firm called Lloyd's Life. And they made a really startling discovery about the nature of their industry. They found that their prestigious historical brand name didn't actually move the needle when they tried to sell life insurance directly to consumers.
Wait, the brand name didn't matter?
Barely at all. Through their data, they found that consumers generally viewed all insurance as essentially identical.
Oh, like a commoditized grudge purchase.
Exactly. There was virtually no brand awareness or loyalty in the category itself.
Wow.
But if you look at a company like Direct Line Insurance in the UK, they flipped that dynamic entirely. They built a massive market-leading brand purely through direct marketing.
Right, because instead of relying on a logo or a vague sense of prestige, they built their entire empire on the mechanics of one-to-one communication.
Yeah.
They didn't just blast out a message saying, buy our insurance. They used the direct channels to answer specific customer questions, provide immediate, tailored service, and basically establish a relationship of trust from the ground up.
They made the invisible product feel tangible through the quality of their direct communication.
Exactly.
They recognize that when a product is complex and intangible, the consumer needs to feel guided.
Right. Mass advertising can't really hold your hand and walk you through a complex policy.
No, but a perfectly timed, highly personalized direct communication sequence absolutely can.
And it's fascinating that the text points out how completely agnostic this tool is. Like, it's not just for consumer goods or corporate services.
Oh, far from it.
It notes that direct marketing was the financial and persuasive engine for presidential candidates as diverse as Ross Perot, Bill Clinton, and George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, the author even wrote direct copy for both the UK Conservative and Labour parties.
Which is wild. And just to be clear to you listening, we're obviously not taking any political sides here or endorsing any viewpoints at all. We are strictly reporting on the text.
Yeah, entirely neutral here.
But it really proves the point, right? The
Yeah.
math doesn't care about the ideology.
Not even a little bit.
Direct marketing is a tool so profoundly effective at persuading human beings, mobilizing specific voting blocks, and raising funds that it is relied upon across the entire political spectrum.
The political application perfectly illustrates the underlying architecture of the method. When a political campaign uses direct marketing, they aren't trying to persuade the entire country with one broad message.
That would be a waste of money.
A huge waste. Instead, they're using data to identify single-issue voters. They send a highly specific message about healthcare strictly to nurses and doctors.
Right.
They send a highly specific message about agricultural subsidies strictly to farmers. It's a technology of extreme precision.
So the mechanism of isolating an individual, understanding their specific friction points, and speaking directly to their needs remains identical whether you are selling a commercial insurance policy or a vision for the country's future.
Exactly. It's the exact same psychological engine.
But let's look at the friction point of prestige for a second, because some products rely heavily on exclusivity. I'm thinking about high-end luxury.
Yeah.
It feels like we're comparing direct marketing to a high-end concierge service. Like, you wouldn't buy a $100,000 sports car because you saw a generic billboard on the highway.
Definitely not.
A billboard is a broadcast. It's just screaming at everyone, hoping someone with $100,000 in disposable income happens to drive by.
Which is highly inefficient.
Super inefficient. But if that luxury brand used their data to identify you as a qualified buyer and directly sent you a personalized, beautifully crafted, thick stock invitation to a private test drive at a local country club.
That changes the dynamic completely.
Yes, the prestige doesn't come from being seen by millions of strangers. The prestige comes from the extreme tailored personalization.
That is the exact psychological mechanism at play there. The personalized invitation is treating the consumer as a verified individual with demonstrated means and interest.
Right.
Inherently, that feels vastly more prestigious than a mass broadcast. It elevates the consumer's status.
It makes them feel special.
Exactly. And this raises an incredibly important question for anyone auditing their own business model. Are you arbitrarily limiting your view of what this tool can do for you simply because you misunderstand how it scales?
That's a great point.
Even if you sell a highly complex business-to-business software platform or million-dollar commercial real estate, a direct, personalized communication strategy can be reverse engineered to fit the exact psychology of your buyer.
You just have to analyze the data to figure out how to make that whisper highly relevant to them.
Yes.
So, okay, If we are building these deep personalized relationships, that sounds incredibly resource intensive.
It can be, yeah.
Sending thick stock invitations or having dedicated account managers for one-to-one communication is expensive. How does a company actually integrate this without tearing their existing operations apart or just going bankrupt?
Well, the text provides a really rigorous framework for this. It outlines 7 critical questions to establish the exact role direct marketing should play in your specific business before you spend a single dime.
Right, let's go through those because the foundational question is structural, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to clearly define who you are as an entity.
Okay.
Are you a pure direct marketing company? Think of brands like Dell in its early days or Amazon, where the direct relationship literally is the entire business model, and there are no physical retail middlemen.
Right.
Or are you a traditional general business that is going to use direct marketing as a surgical tool to augment your existing operations?
Because the infrastructure required for those two paths is radically different.
Completely different.
And that leads directly into the mathematics of your goal. The first major question the author poses is, what is your overall business objective?
Which really translates to, are you optimizing for volume or are you optimizing for immediate profit?
Because those two goals dictate entirely different financial models.
They are completely opposed strategies in the short term.
Okay, break that down for us.
If your objective is volume, meaning you want to acquire as many new customers as aggressively as possible to capture market share, your direct marketing is going to look incredibly generous.
Like giving things away for free.
Almost.
Yeah.
You might offer massive upfront discounts, free trials, or even take a deliberate financial loss on the first transaction.
Wow.
You do this because your data tells you that the lifetime value, the LTV, of that customer is high enough to justify the initial loss.
Right. You make it back over the next few years.
Exactly. But if you are a smaller business and you need immediate cash flow, you cannot afford to optimize for volume.
You'd go out of business.
Very quickly. Your strategy must optimize for immediate profit. This means your offers have to be structured around high-margin items, and you spend your budget only targeting highly qualified, low-friction leads.
So if you mix these two objectives up,
You will destroy your cash flow.
that is a terrifying reality check. Then we get into the psychology of the audience, right? What kind of firm are you regarding brand awareness?
Yeah, are you an established player, or are you starting completely from scratch?
Because the actual words you use in your marketing have to change based on that answer.
The burden of proof shifts dramatically.
How so?
Well, if you are a startup and nobody knows who you are, your direct marketing has to do incredibly heavy lifting.
Right.
A single letter or email has to introduce the brand, establish credibility, provide social proof, overcome the natural skepticism of a cold prospect, and then finally ask for the sale.
So the copy is going to be longer and much more educational.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if you already have massive brand awareness, you already have a reservoir of trust. You can bypass a lot of that introductory friction and get straight to a highly compelling offer.
You also can't just operate in a vacuum, though. You have to ask, what current marketing activities do you conduct?
Right.
The source stresses that direct marketing requires a holistic architectural plan. It can't just be an opportunistic, knee-jerk reaction where the digital team sends out an email blast that totally contradicts what the retail stores are doing.
It requires complete synergy. If you are running a massive television campaign to build brand awareness, your direct marketing should essentially catch the net that the TV ad throws.
I love that visual.
Right. The TV ad creates the emotional desire and the broad awareness, and then the targeted direct mail or email hits the specific prospect with the exact call to action. They are two halves of the same machine.
But implementing that machine brings us to perhaps the most vital and often the most politically fraught question the author poses.
Yeah.
It's about internal company dynamics.
Yeah.
Who is your champion?
The Queen Isabella analogy.
Yes. The author compares starting a direct marketing initiative within a traditional entrenched company to Christopher Columbus trying to fund his voyage to the New World.
Which is such a great way to frame it.
It really is, because Columbus couldn't just build a massive ship in his backyard. He needed a powerful sponsor to fund the voyage, legitimize the mission, and basically protect him from the political fallout if things got difficult.
He needed Queen Isabella of Spain.
Exactly. Similarly, a direct marketing initiative inside a traditional company needs a champion at the very top of the organizational chart, someone with real, unassailable budget authority.
And the reason for this is what you could call the organizational immune system.
Oh, the immune system. Tell me about that.
Without that top-level champion, The initiative will face endless internal friction.
Like office politics.
Brutal office politics. The traditional mass marketing team will feel their budget is being threatened. The retail sales team might feel you're trying to steal their commissions by going direct to the consumer.
Oh, wow.
The IT department will complain about the new data requirements. Without a Queen Isabella to decree that this is the new direction of the company, the initiative will just suffer death by 1,000 cuts.
Let me push back on that, though.
Okay, sure.
What if you are a mid-level marketing director at a legacy company and your CEO is entirely focused on traditional retail? You don't have a Queen Isabella. Are you just doomed? Can't you run a small skunkworks project, like a quiet email test, to prove the math in the shadows and build a case?
You absolutely can. And honestly, you often must run those isolated tests to gather the data.
Right.
But the warning in the text is about the moment of scaling.
Okay, what happens then?
The moment your quiet test succeeds and you need real budget to scale it up, you will hit a structural wall. Direct marketing fundamentally changes how a company operates.
It's not just marketing.
Exactly. It changes how inventory is managed, how customer data is legally stored and utilized, and how customer service handles direct inquiries.
Right, the whole supply chain might have to shift.
And a mid-level manager simply does not have the political capital to force the logistics department to change their entire shipping protocol just to accommodate a new direct-to-consumer offer.
I see.
You can prove the concept in the shadows, but to actually integrate it into the business model, you eventually have to recruit that executive champion.
That makes a lot of sense. The friction isn't the marketing itself. The friction is the operational pivot required to support the marketing.
Exactly.
But let's assume you navigate the politics. You have your champion, you know your objective, and you secure the budget. What is the actual psychological engine that makes this method so incredibly profitable over time?
Well, this is where the true financial leverage of direct marketing lives.
How do you move past just acquiring a customer and actually keep them?
It shines brightest, not on that initial first-time transaction, which is often the most expensive part of the process, by the way, but in the creation of a built-in continuing relationship.
A continuing relationship.
Right. The fundamental philosophy is to turn a cold prospect into a customer, and then systematically turn that customer into a loyal advocate. The most profitable businesses in the world don't hunt for new sales every day. They farm the relationships they have already acquired.
The source material has some incredible case studies on this, specifically regarding how to handle friction points with the customer.
Oh, the shipping delay story.
Yes. There's the story of a U.S. mail order firm that ran into a massive operational problem, a severe shipping delay. Customers were waiting weeks for items they had already paid for.
A total nightmare for any business.
Absolute nightmare. Now, standard corporate crisis management dictates that you send a highly sanitized, groveling apology email and just pray the customer doesn't initiate a chargeback.
Right, you just try to hide.
But this firm took a radically different approach. They sent a physical letter apologizing sincerely for the delay, taking total human accountability.
Okay.
And in that same exact letter, they included a special exclusive invitation to buy 6 more items while they waited.
And it was wildly successful.
Which on the surface feels incredibly risky. Like, if I'm a consumer and I'm already annoyed that you haven't shipped my first order, isn't it borderline offensive to ask me for more money?
It seems so counterintuitive until you analyze the psychology of what is known as the service recovery paradox.
Okay, the service recovery paradox. What is that?
Human beings don't actually expect perfection. They expect accountability.
Interesting.
If we look at the mechanics of a well-handled apology, it actually creates a deeper bond than if the transaction had gone perfectly in the first place.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine you are at a highly rated restaurant. The kitchen completely ruins your main course. You are frustrated.
Naturally, yeah.
But then the manager doesn't just send a waiter to clear the plate. The manager comes to your table personally. They look you in the eye, apologize sincerely, take the item off the bill, and then say, to make this right, please accept this dessert on the house, and I would love to offer you a private, off-menu wine tasting the next time you visit.
Oh, wow. Right, the psychology there is reciprocity.
Exactly.
By overcompensating for the error and treating you with immense personal respect, they've actually created a social debt. You aren't angry anymore, you feel like a VIP.
Precisely. They built fierce defensive loyalty out of a mechanical mistake. They treated the customer not as a logistical inconvenience, but as a valued insider.
That is so smart.
And the mail order firm executed the exact same psychological play. They communicated directly, owned the mistake without corporate jargon, and then offered a special exclusive opportunity to make it right. It proved to the customer that they were paying attention, which deepened the relationship equity.
And you can manufacture that feeling of exclusivity even without making a mistake, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The text details the strategy of Murray Rafel, who runs a retail store in Atlantic City. He uses targeted direct mail to promote a highly curated, invite-only New Year's sale.
Right, but there's a catch with that sale.
Exactly. Here's the catch.
Yeah.
The sale only lasts for 5 hours.
5 hours.
And that tiny 5-hour window generates more actual revenue than the massive month-long regular sales that follow.
Which is just staggering to think about.
Right. Why does a shorter window work better? It's the mechanics of the velvet rope. Because the people receiving that direct mail aren't just seeing a generic sale sign in a window. They're holding a physical invitation to an exclusive event.
Yeah.
The scarcity of the 5 hours, combined with personalization of the invitation, forces immediate action.
It leverages the relationship equity they have built over the year. But, perhaps the most mechanically overlooked opportunity for relationship building that the author highlights is the guarantee form, or the immediate post-purchase moment.
Oh, the post-purchase window.
Yeah. Think about the neurology of a purchase. When someone has just handed you their credit card and bought something, their brain is flooded with dopamine.
Right, they're excited.
They have literally just validated your company with their hard-earned money.
Yeah.
They are in a state of high emotional satisfaction.
Okay.
This is the absolute optimal, yet most frequently neglected moment to capture their extended data, start a strong onboarding relationship, and strategically offer them a complimentary product.
It is the classic bounce-back offer.
Yes, exactly.
You buy a high-end digital camera, you are thrilled with the purchase. Right in that dopamine window, the company reaches out directly, maybe in the confirmation email or a card inside the box, and says, "Welcome to the family. Since you just bought the camera, here is a one-time 48-hour offer on the perfect professional carrying case."
Right.
You map out the customer's emotional journey and strategically place offers in their highest happy moments.
It transforms the entire business model from a series of disconnected, expensive transactional hunts into a cohesive ecosystem where one purchase naturally leads to the next.
It's brilliant.
But here is the mathematical reality. To farm that relationship efficiently, you have to find the right seeds in the first place. You cannot afford to provide concierge-level follow-up to people who are never going to buy again.
Which leads to the core problem of scale. How do you find those highly qualified people without going bankrupt on acquisition costs?
Yeah, that's the big question.
That is the essence of precision targeting, the mathematical imperative of speaking to somebody versus speaking to everybody. Because one of the greatest silent killers in modern business is spending a massive advertising budget to speak to everyone, when your actual viable market is only a tiny specific subset of the population.
This exposes the fundamental inefficiency of mass advertising for niche products.
Yeah.
The author introduces the Pareto principle, the famous 80-20 rule, and applies it strictly to audience data and revenue generation.
Okay. How does that look in practice?
In almost any established business, if you look at the raw data, roughly 80% of your long-term revenue is going to come from the top 20% of your customer base.
Oh, the hyper buyers.
The hyper buyers, exactly. So mathematically, why on earth would you pay premium rates to broadcast your message to the 80% who will either buy once in turn or never buy at all?
It's the sheer folly of buying an enormously expensive national television ad or a 2-page spread in a general interest magazine when your product has patchy regional distribution or highly limited appeal.
It's just burning money.
You're paying for millions of eyeballs that have zero probability of converting. The source points out that direct mail, targeted email, or specialized telephone marketing are vastly more cost-effective.
Right, because you are only paying the delivery cost to reach the people whose past purchasing behavior mathematically indicates an interest in what you sell. You use data appending to find the 20%.
But here is where we must introduce a highly critical nuance, and it is a trap that many data-obsessed marketers fall into.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the trap.
The author is very careful to explain that while direct marketing is incredibly efficient, it is not always sufficient on its own.
That's a huge point.
It is not a magical cure-all that allows you to abandon brand building entirely. He details a fascinating case study of a U.S. car company that decided to be overly clever with their mathematics.
Oh.
Yeah, they created a brilliant, highly targeted, flawlessly executed direct marketing program to sell a brand new line of cars. They identified the exact right buyers.
Okay, so the targeting was perfect.
Perfect. But to save money, they did virtually zero general mass market advertising.
And despite the perfect targeting, the campaign failed miserably, didn't it?
It was a complete disaster.
But we have to look at why it failed.
Right.
It failed because a car is not just a mode of transportation. It is a highly visible social signifier.
Very true.
Imagine buying a brand new, expensive luxury car. A significant portion of the psychological value of that purchase is the social cachet. You want your neighbors, your colleagues, and your friends to recognize the logo and admire the vehicle.
You want the status.
Exactly. But if you pull into your driveway in a car that literally no one has ever seen or heard of because it was never advertised on television or billboards, that social value drops to zero.
Wow.
A buyer couldn't enjoy the prestige of the purchase because the general public had no idea what the car was or what it cost. The car had no environmental context.
That perfectly illustrates the symbiotic relationship between the two disciplines. Mass advertising isn't always a waste. It has a highly specific function. It builds the theater.
The theater, yes.
It constructs the environment of prestige and public recognition. It goes back to the high society gala analogy we used earlier.
Right.
Mass advertising is the incredibly expensive, flashy designer outfit you wear to the gala. You don't wear it to close a deal. You wear it so that everyone in the room immediately respects your status the moment you walk through the door.
It establishes your credibility to the crowd.
Exactly. But direct marketing is the quiet, highly technical, one-on-one conversation you have in the corner with a specific investor that actually signs the million-dollar contract.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. The designer outfit, the mass advertising, makes the investor willing to have the conversation with you in the first place.
Right. It lowers their defenses.
Exactly. It lowers their defense mechanisms.
Right.
But the outfit itself doesn't negotiate the terms or sign the contract. The direct, one-on-one conversation closes the deal. You often need both to succeed, especially if your product's value relies heavily on social cachet, public trust, or visible prestige.
So the practical application for a business owner is to run a very sober, ego-free calculation.
Ego-free being the operative word there.
Yeah, you have to calculate the actual percentage of the mass market that realistically needs your product. If it's a tiny fraction, you must shift your budget heavily toward direct channels to survive. You have to stop subsidizing the 80% who don't care.
Yeah.
However, you must maintain just enough general brand presence to ensure that when your targeted prospect receives your direct mail, they actually recognize your logo and trust your authority.
And that requires a level of discipline that, frankly, many executives lack.
Why do you say that?
Well, many CEOs love mass advertising simply because it satisfies their ego to see their own company's commercial during a football game.
Oh, for sure.
Transitioning to direct marketing requires you to abandon that public ego and look entirely at the cold, hard spreadsheet of customer acquisition costs.
And abandoning that ego is incredibly difficult for a lot of leaders.
It really is.
Understanding this delicate balance between brand building and direct response is tricky, which is exactly why so many beginners, and even massive corporations, completely ruin their first attempts at direct marketing.
Yeah, they trip over their own assumptions.
The source material outlines the major traps they fall into, and analyzing these errors is essentially a masterclass in what not to do.
Yeah, the author notes that newcomers, and surprisingly very experienced general marketers who are pivoting, frequently fail because they do not respect the unique mathematical discipline the medium requires.
Right.
The first and most fatal major error is failing to espouse direct marketing thinking entirely.
Which manifests in a very specific destructive corporate behavior, the dumping ground.
Yes, the dumping ground.
Explain that one.
They view direct marketing of the strange kind of professional disdain. Like, if a company manufactures a terrible product that completely failed to sell in retail stores, the executives will suddenly say, well, we have all this dead inventory, let's just blast it out via direct mail or email to our list and get rid of it.
Right, just dump it on the existing customers.
Exactly. But the text explicitly warns against this because it fundamentally misunderstands the mechanism of targeting. It never, ever works.
Using direct marketing to sell a terrible product is like using a military-grade sniper rifle to shoot a spitball.
I love that analogy.
Right. The targeting technology is absolutely flawless. You can identify the exact person, track their habits, and deliver the message right to their hands.
Yeah.
But the payload itself is fundamentally useless. The precision of the delivery cannot magically alter the fact that the product is garbage.
That is exactly the issue. You cannot use precision targeting to force a human being to buy something that provides no value to their life.
You're just annoying them.
You are just efficiently delivering a bad offer,
Yeah.
which actually harms your long-term relationship with that customer because you are training them to associate your emails with low-quality junk.
That is so true.
Which brings us to the second major error: not offering a genuinely good deal. Value is subjective, of course, but the structure of the offer has to be compelling enough to overcome the friction of buying directly.
The text highlights Nespresso as the gold standard for this, right?
Yeah, Nespresso is a brilliant example.
When Nestle launched Nespresso, they didn't just use direct mail to sell bags of coffee beans. That wouldn't be a compelling enough offer to change consumer behavior. They utilized the classic razor and blade business model.
And we should probably break down exactly how that mechanism works for anyone who isn't familiar.
Go for it.
Nespresso used direct marketing to sell a highly engineered, beautiful espresso machine, often subsidizing the upfront cost of that machine to make it highly attractive.
Okay.
But by doing so, they completely locked the consumer into their ecosystem. You couldn't use regular coffee in the machine. You had to buy their proprietary high-margin coffee capsules.
Right.
They used the direct relationship to acquire the customer through the machine and then relied on the recurring consumable nature of the capsules to generate massive long-term profit.
It's genius.
They turned a simple direct mail coffee operation into a global luxury retail empire because the initial offer was mathematically designed for lock-in.
They didn't just make a sale, they engineered a subscription to their ecosystem.
Exactly.
But even if you have a great product and a brilliant razor and blade offer, there is a third major error that quietly kills businesses every single day, and it is purely financial.
Oh, this is the silent killer. It is the failure to ruthlessly negotiate margins.
Okay, let's hear the scary story.
The text tells a genuinely terrifying story of a client who had executed everything perfectly on the marketing side.
Everything.
Everything. They had above-average advertising results. Their copywriting was brilliant. Their response rates were through the roof. People were buying the product in droves.
Okay, so what's the problem?
The company was still going completely broke, bleeding cash every single month.
Right, the classic customer acquisition trap.
Yep.
You get a fantastic response rate, the sales are pouring in, the marketing team is popping champagne, but when the CFO does the postmortem on the quarter, you realize your customer acquisition cost completely swallowed your profit margin.
Exactly.
You are paying more to acquire the relationship than the relationship is actually worth in cash.
Exactly. The cost to print the mailers, buy the data, pay the postage, and fulfill the order was higher than the net profit margin on the product itself.
That is heartbreaking.
It is. And the author's advice here is blunt, unglamorous, and absolutely vital. Haggle. It can mean the difference between profit and loss.
Haggle. Just get in there and negotiate.
Yeah. If your product margin is too thin at the supplier level, no amount of brilliant, highly targeted direct marketing will save you. You will literally grow yourself into bankruptcy because every new customer you acquire puts you further in the red.
Wow.
You have to fight for every single penny on the manufacturing and fulfillment side so that your marketing math actually pencils out.
You have to ensure the payload is profitable before you fire the sniper rifle.
Exactly right.
So if we pull all of these disparate threads together, from the psychology of the Pepsi failure to the political persuasion to the mathematics of margins, we arrive at one clear, overarching insight that really represents the soul of this chapter.
Yeah, the profound realization is that direct marketing is not merely a tactical method for generating quick, cheap sales to clear out inventory.
Right.
It is a comprehensive, mathematically rigorous, and deeply psychological philosophy of doing business. It demands that an organization stop hiding behind the vanity metrics of mass crowds and start prioritizing precise, accountable individual communication.
It requires relentless relationship building. It is the understanding that a transactional buyer is just a data point, but a respected customer is a loyal friend who will defend your brand and buy from you repeatedly. It forces a company to prioritize measurable, undeniable value and hard financial data over the mass market ego-stroking of seeing a corporate logo on a blimp. It's about doing the hard work of whispering the right message to the right person at the exact right moment they are ready to hear it.
It is a complete paradigm shift in how you view your audience. They are no longer a demographic blob on a chart. They are individuals with a specific purchase history, distinct emotional desires, and a willingness to engage deeply if you simply treat them with respect and offer them genuine value.
Now that we understand the vast, untapped psychological and financial potential of direct marketing to completely transform a business, the natural next question is execution.
Right. How do you actually do it?
How do we actually sit down, stare at a blank page, and plan a comprehensive campaign without lighting our budget on fire? Because understanding the philosophy is great, but executing the mathematics and the copywriting is where the rubber meets the road.
Absolutely.
That exact planning phase is what we need to figure out next.
Indeed. The planning phase is where the theoretical vision has to survive the brutal reality of consumer behavior.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering thought to mull over.
Okay.
Think about the very last thing you purchased online. Really picture the transaction. Did that company try to start a meaningful, personalized conversation with you afterward?
Thrilled not.
Did they offer you a strategically complementary product, ask for your genuine feedback, or invite you into a community? Or did they just take your money, ship a brown cardboard box, and disappear into the digital ether? Ask yourself, which kind of company are you building? So what if the biggest missed opportunity in your business is sitting right in front of you, just hidden inside a boring administrative form or maybe a routine customer service call?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Usually when we think about growing a business, we look outward. We think we need this massive new ad campaign or,
Yeah.
some viral social media moment.
Exactly. Or we think we need a completely new product line just to reach people who have never heard of us. We're constantly searching the horizon for new territory.
Which leaves us completely blind to the incredibly fertile ground we're already standing on. I mean, we tend to view growth as this external conquest.
Right.
And because of that blind spot, we leave vast amounts of revenue and relationship equity completely untouched, just buried in the mundane day-to-day operations of the businesses you already run.
It's wild to think about. And that is exactly what we are getting into today. We are taking a deep dive into Chapter 4 of Drayton Bird's classic book, Commonsense Direct and Digital Marketing.
Such a great book.
It really is. And this specific chapter is titled How to Get Started. So we're unpacking a whole stack of sources today to really uncover the core mission of this material.
Which is really about how to identify those hidden direct marketing opportunities within your existing business structure, right?
You got it. You are about to learn what actually makes a product sell, the psychology behind why certain offers work, and honestly, why starting with a bad product is the absolute fastest way to bankrupt yourself.
Yeah, it's a quick race to the bottom if you get that wrong.
Okay.
The overarching goal for this deep dive is to equip anyone interested in business with the tools to just stop guessing.
Whether you're a solo entrepreneur, running a startup, or managing a division of some massive corporation.
Exactly. The aim here is to transition away from throwing your marketing dollars into the void and just hoping for a return. We want you to start building profitable, predictable, and lasting relationships with people who, actually want to hear from you.
So diving into the text, it points out this really fascinating hurdle that a lot of businesses face right out of the gate. Oh, the misconception about needing direct marketing.
Yes.
Huh.
Many companies genuinely believe they don't need it, or they think, well, my specific industry can't use it simply because they misunderstand what direct marketing actually is.
Right.
Bird actually shares this great anecdote about pitching a client who didn't even know what the term meant. But this client had massive, untapped potential to communicate directly with their base.
Yeah.
They just didn't see the mechanics of it.
And they didn't see it because almost every single business has what Bird calls a continuing relationship built into its very structure. They just categorize it incorrectly.
How do you mean, like mislabeling it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We tend to silo business functions really rigidly, like sales is sales, customer service handles the complaints, administration pushes the paper. We treat these as totally separate worlds.
Oh, I see.
But direct marketing, at its core, is just establishing and exploiting a direct link between you and your prospect. It's taking those administrative or service touchpoints and recognizing them as a channel for communication. That brings up a paradox highlighted in the text that I found, frankly, incredibly counterintuitive. Bird talks about complex, intangible products.
Oh, yeah. Like life insurance.
Exactly. Life insurance, home loans, intricate financial services. On the surface, you would think those are the absolute worst candidates for direct marketing.
It seems that way, right?
Yeah. I mean, how can you possibly sell a 20-year life insurance policy directly to someone through a letter or an email? Usually you need a salesperson sitting in their living room for 3 hours just to walk them through the paperwork.
But the book argues that these complex products are actually ideal for direct marketing.
Wait, really? Why is that?
The logic kind of flips our usual assumptions upside down. When we look at human psychology, complexity requires explanation.
Okay, that makes sense.
If a product is highly complex, the customer naturally has questions,
Mm-hmm.
right? They have anxieties.
Mm-hmm.
They have this deep need for clarity because they feel vulnerable. They don't fully understand what they're buying.
They're essentially terrified of making an expensive mistake.
Exactly. So when a business uses direct marketing to step into that void and provide clarity, like explaining the mechanics directly, clearly, and patiently through a really well-crafted sequence of communication, it completely alters the dynamic of the relationship.
It's like you become their translator in a foreign country.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
Right. If I'm wandering around a city where I don't speak the language and someone stops to help me read the train schedule, I immediately trust them. They made the terrifying thing make sense, so I kind of cling to them.
And the business that takes the time to explain the complex financial product becomes that translator.
So it's not just a transaction anymore.
Not at all. That translator dynamic is incredibly powerful because it shifts your position in the entire market. You aren't just a vendor peddling a policy anymore.
You're a trusted advisor.
Exactly. And that direct bond serves as a highly effective defense mechanism against competitor attacks.
Oh, because the trust is already locked in.
Right? Imagine another insurance company comes along and offers that exact same customer a slightly lower premium. The customer is highly unlikely to jump ship.
Because the new company hasn't done the work.
They haven't invested the time to educate them. They haven't built that bridge of trust. The customer is going to stick with the company that made them feel safe and informed, even if it costs a fraction more.
That is fascinating. And, if direct communication creates that kind of loyalty for incredibly dry, complex financial products, the application for standard service industries must be massive.
Oh, it's huge.
Think about a neighborhood restaurant. Most restaurants just think they are in the business of selling food, right? People come in, they eat, they pay, they leave.
The standard transaction.
Right. But if that restaurant keeps a VIP list, if they actually capture names, birthdays, email addresses, and then they reach out directly to invite those regulars to special tasting menus.
They're no longer just competing on the price of a hamburger.
Exactly. They've moved into the data and relationship business. They're competing on trust and clarity and that feeling of belonging.
But the execution of that relationship is where most people get it really wrong. The source material emphasizes that utilizing direct techniques does not mean blasting generic mass messages to everyone on your list.
Oh, like spamming everyone with the same coupon.
Exactly. That is a huge misconception. Direct marketing is fundamentally a game of precision. It is incredibly wasteful to spend money broadcasting to the masses when you can isolate and talk directly to individuals who have already shown intent.
People who've already raised their hands.
Precisely. Or, better yet, finding a mechanism to reach your competitors' customers directly.
Oh, wow. That is the ultimate leverage, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
If you can identify the exact people who already buy the type of product you sell, but they're currently buying it from someone else, your marketing dollars become infinitely more efficient.
So the practical takeaway for you listening right now is to really do a ruthless audit of your current business operations. Look at every single place you interact with people.
Do you have an informational newsletter? Do you have people calling your support line?
Do you have a backlog of past client invoices sitting in a drawer? You need to look at those specific touch points and ask yourself a hard question.
Right. Are we capturing this data to build a continuing relationship? Or are we letting these people walk out the door and just hoping they magically decide to come back?
And that audit naturally leads to a timing issue, doesn't it? Once you realize you are in the relationship business, you have to figure out the exact moment to initiate that direct conversation.
Yeah, timing is everything here.
The book points to a specific window of time that most business owners completely ignore. The absolute best time to start direct marketing to someone is immediately after they have bought from you.
Which feels totally backwards to a lot of people.
It really does. The instinct is always, well, they just gave me their money. I should leave them alone so I don't annoy them or seem greedy.
But psychologically, that post-purchase moment is a peak emotional state. Marketers actually refer to this as the afterglow of a purchase.
The afterglow. I love that term.
It's very real. The customer has just made a decision to solve a problem or fulfill a desire. Their dopamine is spiking. They have consciously validated their decision to trust you by handing over their credit card.
So they are in a highly receptive state.
Exactly. And yet Bird points to the most mundane, overlooked item as the golden ticket to capture this afterglow.
The guarantee form, the warranty card.
The warranty card. It is a massive, frequently neglected mechanism. Think about how most companies view it.
Just a legal requirement, usually.
Right. It's treated as a chore, just boring administrative stuff. The manufacturer tosses it in the box, the customer fills it out, mails it in, it goes into a filing cabinet, and it just gathers dust until the product breaks.
But consider what that card actually represents.
Exactly. It is the customer willingly handing over their name, their home address, and their specific purchase history at the exact moment they are happiest with your brand.
It is an invitation to converse, literally disguised as paperwork.
That's beautifully put.
But I do have to push back a little on the customer's mindset here. Let's look at this from the perspective of the person actually filling out the card.
Okay, let's play devil's advocate.
If I buy a new toaster and I'm filling out the warranty card, I'm just trying to make sure I get a replacement if it breaks in 6 months. I'm doing administrative paperwork.
Right.
I am absolutely not sitting there hoping the toaster company starts marketing to me. Why would I want to receive offers when I'm just trying to secure a guarantee?
Well, you wouldn't if the communication feels like a forceful demand to just buy more. The nuance here is in how you frame the follow-up communication.
Okay, so how do you frame it?
You are immediately pitching them another toaster. You're initiating a dialogue based on their recent action. So you might send a welcome letter detailing how to get the most out of the toaster.
Providing value first.
Exactly. Alongside a subtle offer for, say, a discounted bread knife or a specialized cleaning solution. You lead with value, not a hard pitch.
And there is an example in the text that takes this concept of mundane administrative interactions to an absolute extreme. It's about a company handling returns of expensive machines.
This is one of my favorite examples in the book.
It's wild because a return is universally seen as a failure. The customer is actively rejecting your product. They are dissatisfied.
Right. A return is the moment most companies assume the relationship is totally dead.
But this particular company used the return interaction to actually establish a relationship?
Yes. They didn't make the customer jump through hoops. They behaved honorably. They refunded the money promptly, without any argument.
And because they established that trust directly in a moment of extreme friction, 25% of those customers actually ended up buying a more expensive machine from the very company they just returned a product to.
25%. It's an incredible statistic.
It completely defies standard business logic.
Oh, yeah?
They hated the first machine enough to pack it up, tape the box, and ship it back. Why on earth would they turn around and give that same company even more money for a different machine?
It all comes down to the psychology of reciprocity and risk reversal.
Risk reversal.
Yeah. When a customer buys an expensive machine, they carry all the psychological risk. If it doesn't work out, they fear they're going to be stuck with a lemon.
So when they initiate the return, their anxiety is really high.
Exactly. But when the company immediately refunds them, the company takes that risk back. The customer experiences this massive wave of relief.
Oh, I see. The company has essentially proven they're safe to do business with.
Right. The customer now thinks, well, the first machine wasn't right for me, but I know this company won't rip me off. The trust totally overrides the initial product failure, creating the perfect environment for an upsell to a machine that better fits their needs.
That is a brilliant breakdown of the mechanism. You can take this principle of leveraging existing touch points and apply it directly to a sales force too, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The text provides a case study of launching a new catering product to thousands of retail outlets. Now, sending a human sales rep to physically visit thousands of outlets is incredibly expensive, time-consuming, and just highly inefficient.
This is a logistical nightmare.
Right. So instead of blind cold calling, they used a simple direct mailing that offered a free sample of the new catering product.
But the mailing wasn't just a blind giveaway. To receive the free sample, the catering outlets had to fill out a response device that asked for vital data.
Like what kind of data?
Things like the number of meals they served per day, the specific types of food they sold, who their current suppliers were, And that mailing got 25% of the recipients to raise their hands and request the sample.
Which completely changes the dynamic for the sales team.
Entirely.
Mhm.
Instead of knocking on doors just hoping someone might be interested, the sales force is now only calling on the 25% who have already experienced the product.
And they are calling them armed with detailed intelligence about their business volume and needs.
Exactly. The direct marketing campaign supercharged the sales force by providing warm, data-rich leads while simultaneously building a database to deepen the relationship in the future.
So the lesson here is that passive expenses can be engineered into active profit centers.
That's the perfect way to summarize it.
If you are running image-building advertisements, ads that just show a nice picture of your product and say, "We are a great company," the text strongly advises adding a response device to them.
Don't just pay for a billboard.
Right. Add a dedicated phone number. Add a specific website landing page, a unique coupon code. Give the viewer a reason to reply. Turn your brochures from passive informational documents into active data collection devices.
And when a customer calls for support, use that interaction to understand what adjacent problems they might need solved. You're building a mechanism to talk to people who actually want to listen.
But having a list of people who want to listen brings up a critical challenge, which brings us to key idea 3.
Yes, the danger zone.
Once you have captured these names and built the mechanism, you have to decide what to actually sell them. And more importantly, according to Bird, you must understand what not to sell them.
Because there is a major trap waiting for people who have just built their first direct marketing database.
It is the garbage disposal fallacy. It's one of the most common and fatal errors companies make. They look at their warehouse, they see a product that they haven't been able to sell through retail or through their sales force, and they think,
We have this new direct marketing channel. We'll just mail an offer to our list and finally get rid of this dead inventory.
it's like putting lipstick on a pig. They view direct marketing as a magic wand that can fix a fundamentally flawed product.
But direct marketing is merely a magnifying glass. If your product is excellent, direct marketing will magnify that excellence and allow you to scale rapidly.
And if your product is terrible,
It will simply magnify your losses. You will spend money on postage, design, and copywriting, only to have the market reject the product exactly as they did in the retail store.
the text emphasizes a fundamental rule. You must offer a good deal. But we really need to unpack what that actually means, because value is highly subjective.
It is. It has very little to do with the objective costs of the raw materials used to make the product.
Let's explore that subjective value, because it's a concept that trips up a lot of really logical thinkers. Bird contrasts two very different types of business models to illustrate this.
Right. He starts with the limited edition commemorative medals.
Like those sold by the Franklin Mint, to the vast majority of the general population, a commemorative coin has absolutely no value. It is literally just a piece of stamped metal.
But to a specific, highly targeted collector, that metal has immensely high value.
Why is that considered a good deal to them?
Because of the perceived exclusivity, the emotional resonance of the subject matter, and just the sheer desire to complete a collection. The cost of the metal might be $3, but they will happily pay $50 because the value is derived from psychological satisfaction, not material cost.
And then he contrasts that with the Nespresso model.
Nespresso is such a fascinating application of subjective value. They sell a beautifully designed, relatively high-priced coffee machine.
But the real business model, the continuing relationship, is that the machine only accepts their specific proprietary coffee capsules.
It is a modern variation of the classic Gillette razor and blade strategy. You buy the handle once, but you buy the blades forever.
But wait, if a consumer actually sat down and calculated the objective cost per gram of coffee grounds inside an Nespresso capsule, they would realize they are paying an astronomical premium compared to buying a bag of beans.
Oh, it's incredibly expensive per gram.
So why do they do it? Why is it perceived as a good deal?
Because the customer isn't buying coffee grounds. They are buying convenience. They are buying the guarantee of a perfectly consistent cup of espresso with absolutely zero cleanup.
And maybe the aesthetic, too.
Exactly. They are buying the lifestyle association of having that sleek machine on their counter. The psychology of a good deal relies entirely on how the customer perceives the offer, the convenience, and the status, not the raw material cost.
This means that if a product fails in a traditional retail environment, taking that same product and just mailing a brochure for it will likely result in another failure.
Unless the positioning or the actual structure of the deal is radically altered.
Which requires a brutal level of honesty from business owners. How does an entrepreneur remove their ego from the equation and objectively compare their product to what the competition is offering? We all tend to fall in love with our own creations.
It is arguably the hardest thing for any creator or business owner to do. We are just blind to the flaws of our own products. But the text is uncompromising on this point. You must compare your product objectively to the competition.
Right.
If it is not superior in some tangible way, price, quality, convenience, or guarantee, you have to improve it before launching a direct campaign. You cannot rely on your own hunches or the reassurance of your employees.
So how do you remove yourself from the process?
The only way to remove your ego is to remove yourself entirely and ask the only people whose opinions actually matter.
You have to survey the customers.
Exactly. Before you launch a massive direct campaign, use that continuing relationship we talked about earlier. Survey your existing base.
Ask them what problems they're actively trying to solve.
Ask them what frustrations they have with current market offerings, what products they wish you carried. Let the market tell you what it wants to buy, rather than trying to force your preconceived product onto the market.
Okay, but what if you do that? What if you diligently survey your audience and they tell you exactly what they want and you realize you don't actually make that thing?
That happens all the time.
Where do you go to find winning product ideas if you don't have a massive research and development lab at your disposal? I think a lot of people feel paralyzed here because they believe they have to be a solitary creative genius, just sitting in a room waiting for a wholly original million-dollar idea to strike them.
That is a pervasive myth that keeps countless people from ever getting started. You do not need to invent the wheel. In fact, trying to invent a completely new product category is incredibly risky and really expensive.
So what's the alternative?
The text provides a rapid-fire, highly practical list of places to source successful product ideas, which we can kind of think of as an idea mine.
Let's dig into that mine then. The very first suggestion Bird makes, and this one might rub some people the wrong way, is to copy other people and improve on their offers.
Yep.
Now, wait a minute. Copy other people. Isn't that just plagiarism? That feels incredibly unethical, not to mention legally risky. How is that a valid business strategy?
It's a crucial distinction to make. We need to clearly separate blind plagiarism from market-tested iteration.
Okay, define the difference for us.
Plagiarism is stealing someone's copyrighted material, ripping off their exact design, or copying their sales letter word for word. That is illegal and unethical.
Right.
Iteration, however, is observing a market and recognizing a proven demand. It is looking at a competitor and saying, people are clearly buying thousands of these ergonomic office chairs. The market demand is verified.
So you know the fish are biting.
Exactly. Then you ask, how can I offer a chair that solves the same problem, but with slightly better lumbar support, a much stronger warranty, or a more compelling direct mail offer? You are taking a proven conceptual framework and filtering it through your own unique value proposition.
That makes perfect sense. You aren't stealing the product. You are validating the demand and competing on the execution.
Precisely.
It seems like innovation in direct marketing often looks a lot more like translation rather than pure invention, taking an idea that works in one specific context and translating it to another.
Geographic translation is a classic example of this, and it is the next strategy in the idea mine. The text suggests going to trade shows, traveling, and studying foreign newspapers and magazines.
That's clever.
Let's say you find a direct marketing campaign for a specialized gardening tool that is absolutely dominating the market in Germany. The demand for that solution has been heavily tested and proven.
Right, someone else already spent the money figuring out that people want this.
Exactly. There is a very high probability that a culturally adapted, translated version of that exact same offer will perform exceptionally well in the UK or the United States. You aren't inventing the tool, you are arbitraging the geography. You are bringing a proven solution to a new audience.
Okay, so we have iteration and geographic translation. What if I don't want to manufacture anything at all? Let's say I just want to sell.
Then you can look into using syndicators.
Let's define that, because syndicator isn't a term you hear every day outside of television reruns. What exactly is a syndicator in the context of direct marketing?
A syndicator, in this world, is a company that puts together complete mail-order deals. They have the physical product, they have often created the marketing materials, the brochures, the sales letters, and they handle all the fulfillment.
So they have the whole package ready to go.
Right. And they approach a business that has a large customer list, let's say a credit card company, and they offer to syndicate a deal. The credit card company sends the offer to their list, and they just split the profits with the syndicator.
It's basically a joint venture where one party brings the product and the other brings the audience.
Precisely. It allows you to sell products to your list without any of the inventory risk or product development costs. However, Bird does warn that you must run the numbers carefully to ensure there is enough profit margin in the deal for both parties to survive the marketing costs.
Which brings up the next strategy in the idea mine, combining items into sets. Bird points out that things like a set of motoring tools or a block of kitchen knives are perennial bestsellers.
You really are.
But why does grouping things together make them sell better? I mean, a wrench is a wrench. Why does a set of wrenches suddenly become a hot, direct marketing item?
Because packaging changes the psychological perception of value. When you sell a single wrench, you are selling a tool. The customer compares the price of your wrench to the price of a wrench at the local hardware store.
It becomes a commodity.
Exactly. But when you combine a wrench, jumper cables, flares, and a tire pressure gauge into a custom carrying case, you are no longer selling individual tools.
What are you selling?
You are selling an ultimate roadside emergency preparedness kit. You are selling peace of mind. The perceived value of the cohesive set is significantly higher than the sum of its individual parts, which allows you to charge a premium.
It's all about how the offer is framed.
100%.
And speaking of framing, the text mentions another strategy that requires defining some industry terminology. It suggests taking successful catalog products and selling them solo via space advertising. First, what does he mean by space advertising?
Space advertising simply refers to buying a dedicated block of space in a print publication, like a quarter-page ad in a magazine or a newspaper, to run a direct response advertisement. It's called space advertising because you are literally purchasing the blank space on the page.
Got it. So the strategy is to look at a massive catalog, find a product that is selling well, and pull it out to run its own dedicated ad.
Yes. Think about a massive 100-page catalog filled with hundreds of items. Let's say there is a collection of specialty rainbow sewing threads or maybe a specific type of exercise bicycle buried on page 40. If the catalog data shows that this specific item is a massive seller, despite being hidden among hundreds of other products, it proves the item has immense standalone appeal.
It's strong enough to survive on its own.
Right. You can then pull that item out, create a dedicated solar advertisement just for that product, and run it in a targeted magazine. While it doesn't guarantee success every single time, a product that survives the clutter of a catalog often thrives when given the spotlight of a solo ad.
And if someone doesn't have access to catalog data or foreign magazines, if they are starting from absolute scratch, just looking for a spark?
The book suggests looking at what door-to-door salespeople are successfully pitching. A door-to-door sale is one of the most difficult transactions to make.
Oh, absolutely. Having a door slammed in your face is brutal.
Right. If a salesperson can convince a stranger to buy a product on their doorstep, it is a massive indicator that the product has a highly compelling narrative. It solves a visceral problem.
And that strong narrative is exactly what is required to sell a product through the mail or online. Finally, Bird mentions looking inward at your own hobbies. He tells a story about a friend who ran a rare coin business for 30 years. And there is a deeply practical reason for this, isn't there?
There is. Direct marketing, especially in the beginning, is an agonizing process of testing, failing, tweaking, and testing again. It requires grueling hours.
It's not a get-rich-quick scheme.
Not at all. It is vastly easier to maintain the stamina required to succeed if you actually care about the product you are selling.
If you hate the product, you will quit before you find the winning formula.
Absolutely, you'll just burn out.
So the overarching lesson of the idea mine is, stop trying to be Thomas Edison. You don't need to invent the light bulb. Look at adjacent markets, study foreign ads, analyze what door-to-door salesmen are pitching, or look at your own hobbies.
Find a proven concept with verified demand, bring it to your audience, and iterate on the execution to make it better.
But finding a great product idea is only half the battle. This is where we really need to introduce a heavy dose of reality, because this next concept is where countless businesses bleed to death.
Yes, the math.
The other half of the equation is ensuring the economics of that product won't run your business into the ground. A brilliant idea with bad margins is not a business. It is a rapid path to bankruptcy.
It really is.
Key idea 5 from the text is entirely focused on margins, markups, and the brutal mathematics of getting started. We need to spend some serious time here because this is the math that determines survival.
Yeah, we can't gloss over this.
The core rule is that any product you sell directly must have the right margins to survive the intrinsic costs of direct marketing. Let's define what we mean by those costs.
Okay, so when you sell a product in a traditional retail store, the store pays for the foot traffic
Mm-hmm.
through their location and their general brand advertising, right?
Right.
But when you use direct marketing, you have to pay to acquire every single lead. You have to pay for the postage if it's direct mail, or the cost per click if it's digital advertising.
And the copywriting, the graphic design, the packaging, the shipping fulfillment.
Exactly. All of these are calculated into what is called your customer acquisition cost, or SAC.
Let's do the math on air to make this crystal clear for everyone listening. Let's say I invent a physical widget. It costs me $10 to manufacture,
Yeah.
and I decide to sell it for $15.
Okay, so you have a $5 profit margin on the product itself.
Right. Now, in a vacuum, making $5 profit per item sounds okay, but what happens when I try to sell that widget through direct marketing?
You will fail immediately.
Ouch. Why?
Let's look at the food CAC. Let's say you decide to run digital ads to sell your $15 widget. It might cost you $1.50 every time someone just clicks on your ad. And let's say 1 out of every 10 people who click actually buys the widget.
Okay, so that means I had to pay for 10 clicks, which is $15 in advertising spend, just to get one sale.
So your customer acquisition cost is $15.
I spent $15 on marketing to make a single sale, but remember the product itself cost me $10 to make.
Exactly. So you spent $25 total marketing plus manufacturing to generate $15 in revenue. You are losing $10 on every single sale.
Wow.
A low-margin physical product will literally bankrupt a company when they have to absorb the costs of acquiring a customer directly.
This is why Bird gives a really stark warning against over-ordering inventory. He warns against manufacturing thousands of physical widgets before you have tested the market and verified your acquisition costs.
It's the most common mistake.
Yeah.
If you buy 10,000 units of a product that only gives you a tiny markup, you are trapping your capital in inventory that you literally cannot afford to market.
To survive in direct marketing, you need a massive markup.
Massive. You need a product that costs you $10 to make, but that you can sell for $50 or $100, so that you have enough margin left over to pay for the marketing and still make a profit.
Which brings us to the holy grail of margins. The text highlights a specific type of product that intrinsically solves this mathematical problem.
The ultimate example of a high-margin product is information. Specifically, Bird refers to any product that is simply printed paper.
Printed paper.
Yeah. He notes that a 10-pound book can easily be broken up, expanded into a series of lessons, packaged as a comprehensive training course, and sold for several times as much.
Let's look at the mechanics of why that works, because the raw information is essentially the exact same.
Right.
Let's say I write a business book and sell it at an airport bookstore for $15. The publisher takes a cut, the store takes a cut, the printing costs money. My margin is pennies.
Very slim.
But if I take the exact same chapters from that book, record myself teaching them on video, add some downloadable worksheets, and call it an executive masterclass, I can sell it directly online for $500.
And this is where the concept of perceived value intersects perfectly with the mathematics of margins.
How so?
As a consumer, you are not paying $485 for the cost of the video hosting bandwidth. You are paying for the curated format. You are paying for the guided expertise, the structure of the worksheets, the accountability of a course, and the feeling of being in a premium environment.
So the perceived value skyrockets based entirely on how the information is formatted and presented.
Exactly. And the economics of that $500 course are bulletproof compared to the physical widget.
Completely bulletproof. In today's digital age, printed paper translates to digital courses, PDFs, exclusive newsletters, and private online communities.
The economic principle is identical to what Bird wrote about decades ago, but it is on steroids today. The absolute highest margins exist where the cost of replication is closest to zero.
Which makes sense.
Once you invest the time and money to record that $500 course, selling the second copy costs you almost nothing. Selling the 10,000th copy costs you nothing. Your margin is nearly 100%.
Therefore, you can afford to spend massive amounts of money on advertising to acquire a customer, completely pricing your low-margin competitors out of the market.
Because whoever can spend the most to acquire a customer wins.
So before you decide to manufacture a complex physical product or import a shipping container full of low-margin widgets, you really need to ask yourself if you can package information instead.
Can you provide the same result to the customer through education, a community, or a digital tool where the cost of replication is zero?
Knowledge is most valuable when it is understood and applied. If you can provide that understanding through an information product, your business becomes incredibly financially resilient.
This mathematical reality is the barrier to entry. If you don't solve the margin equation, all the brilliant copywriting and clever direct mail strategies in the world will not save the business.
Let's tie all of these threads together as we wrap up this deep dive. If we look back across the entire landscape of Chapter 4, what is the grand synthesis? What does it truly mean to get started in direct marketing, stripping away all the jargon and the myths?
If we synthesize the psychology of the relationship, the timing of the afterglow, the subjective nature of value, the sourcing of ideas, and that brutal math of margins, the core insight is this.
Okay.
Direct marketing isn't some magical external channel that you bolt onto a failing business to save it. It isn't a clever trick to force people to buy a product that the market has already rejected.
So what is it?
Direct marketing is a magnifying glass placed over your existing relationships and your existing product value. It amplifies what is already true about your business.
So if your product has high subjective value and incredible margins, direct marketing will explode your growth.
Yes.
But if your product is a low-margin commodity that nobody wants, direct marketing will just accelerate your losses.
Exactly. The soul of this chapter is that getting started doesn't mean launching a massive, highly risky new initiative that requires taking out a second mortgage. It means starting right where you are with the customers you already have.
It means recognizing that the boring warranty card isn't administrative overhead. It is a highly valuable invitation to converse.
It means capturing their name and data precisely when they are in that dopamine-fueled afterglow of happiness.
It means having the humility to survey them and ask exactly what they want, rather than assuming you are a creative genius.
It means sourcing that product intelligently without reinventing the wheel. And critically, packaging it with margins that guarantee your financial survival.
It's a profound shift in perspective. It's about viewing every single interaction, no matter how mundane, as the beginning of a conversation rather than the end of a transaction.
That's the real secret.
Which brings us right back to the question we opened with. That boring administrative form, that routine customer service call, that VIP list at the neighborhood restaurant. It's not just paperwork.
It is the raw material of a continuing relationship.
And that relationship can protect your business from competitors, drive your profitability, and allow you to scale for years to come. The gold is already in the building. You just have to recognize it and start picking it up.
It changes how you view the daily operations of your business forever.
Yeah.
Every single touch point becomes an asset.
Now that you know how to get started, where to mine for winning products, and how to structure your margins so you don't go bankrupt on the first day, you might be wondering how to actually talk about those products to the market.
Oh, that's a whole different ball game.
How do you make sure your customers actually believe the claims you're making about this great new offer? How do you stand out in a sea of competitors all making the exact same promises?
That's the next big hurdle.
Well, that is exactly what we'll uncover in our next deep dive as we explore the mysteries of product positioning. Until then, take a look at your own desk. What boring administrative forms or routine touch points are sitting there right now, just waiting to be turned into your most profitable conversation?
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.